18th Planning Board meeting. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, folks. First, before we go through roll call, I'd like to welcome Tyler Davis to his first meeting on the planning board. Welcome. We have lots of fun here. Sometimes we like to carry it to 10:30, 10:45, but we always have a good time.
Scare him on his first meeting.
Did I scare him? I don't suspect we'll be that long on your first meeting, but we never know. With that, Doreen, do you want to take the roll call?
Rick King,
Here.
James Hebert,
Here.
Rachel Henriksen,
Here.
Roger Beely,
Here.
Bennett Landers.
Here.
Will he be elevated? And Tyler Davis.
Here.
All right, we do have Jennifer Ladd absent, so in place of her, Ben, you're going to vote on these agenda items as needed. So with that, we're going to move to the minutes, and I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our January meeting on the 21st.
So moved.
Second.
I have first from Rachel and a second from Ben. Any discussion? Seeing none. Doreen, you want to take the roll?
Rick King,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
Rachel Henriksen,
Yes.
Bennett Flanders,
Yes.
and Roger Beely.
Yes.
Great. How you doing, Roger? Don't let me forget you're out there.
So far, so good.
Right. All right, now we'll move into some items for consideration. The first one being 4.01 MR Holdings LLC and Coral Palmer on behalf of the Risbera Brothers Construction Company Incorporated are requesting preliminary subdivision review for the Trestle Way subdivision, a 10-lot conservation subdivision located at 10 and 30 Highland Avenue, Assessor's Map R081, lots 18 and 24. Autumn, you want to give us a highlight?
I'm actually going to turn it over to Helen Harmon tonight.
Oh, Helen, you're on the hot seat.
Mr. Chair. So as you said, Ms. M&R Holdings and Coral Palmer on behalf of Risbera Brothers Construction is requesting preliminary subdivision review for the Trestle Way subdivision, 10-lot conservation subdivision at 10 and 30 Highland Avenue. This falls in the R2 zone and is also subject to the conservation subdivision design regulations and the subdivision ordinance. We have a plan for you to see, and the applicant is available for questions.
Is your mic on?
Oh, it should be, yeah.
Maybe a little, I don't think Roger.
Oh,
can
get closer.
Hear you.
Sorry, Roger.
Yeah, it's from here, it's very hard to hear Helen or when Doreen spoke. You're very clear, Rick. So maybe the mic's not close enough.
I've never been told I had a quiet voice.
No.
I'll lean in. Apologies.
3 years on a flight deck of an aircraft carrier, I went deaf. So, thanks for the introduction, and for the applicant, Drew, you're taking this one on?
Yes, sir. Good evening. Drew Gagnon with Coral Palmer, representing Risbera Brothers Construction on this exciting 10-lot subdivision. I am going to share my screen here, hopefully. I have a quick presentation for the board. Great. So this is our cover sheet as well as our overall context map. I want to provide a little bit of context and proximity for the board. So this is that address of 10 and 30 Highland Ave in Scarborough. Black Point Road intersection is down here on the bottom left corner. So this is kind of oriented north, plan north approximately. You'll see that just for proximity, the board approved a townhouse development at 4 Highland Avenue, which is the adjacent parcel next to it. And then this parcel kind of loops around in a U shape with 2 frontages, one kind of on the left-hand side of the parcel, and then on the eastern side of the parcel as well, you'll see the other portion. And then the Boston Main Railroad is located just behind this at the rear of the site. This is a subdivision plan, so the parcel is approximately 7.5 acres. As that was mentioned by Helen, is a 10-lot conservation subdivision in the R2 zone. We're proposing a approximately 650-foot roadway named Trestle Way that would have access onto Highland Avenue. 8 of the lots would have access onto this public roadway or future public roadway, and then 2 of the additional remaining 2 lots would have access directly on Highland Ave. That's on the right-hand side of the screen here. And then the open space for the subdivision is located kind of in the rear and middle portion of the site. In addition, our application package had the construction of an off-site sidewalk, the 10-foot multipurpose path that the town has had designed for a while now along Highland Ave. A previous development that's adjacent to this parcel is constructing the path from Black Point Road to its project entrance, which is just off the screen here. And then this applicant is taking it to the intersection of Trestle Way, and I have a little bit more on that on further slide here. As far as utilities, so we're proposing an 8-inch water main that will reduce down to a 4-inch water main in Trestle Way to serve the 8 residential lots, and then individual services for the 2 lots that directly access Highland Ave. In addition, we're proposing low pressure sewer. So similar to the sidewalk scope, the adjacent development brought a force main up from further down Highland Ave up to the project entrance. This project is continuing that force main in the public right of way to the intersection of Trestle Way and then down Trestle Way to serve those lots. Currently shown in this plan is the force main cutting across the open space to serve the lots of 9 and 10 to get those on public sewer as well. Update on that, which is also in your town comments. And we've been working with the Scarborough Sanitary District on the exact alignment of this force main. Currently, as I mentioned, it's shown cutting through the open space. Another option is to kind of remove it from the open space and transfer that portion to Highland Ave and then extend it a little bit further ways up. That would keep the force main within the public right of way, and it would have the opportunity for additional developments to connect to that force main in the future. This is really a decision right now on the Board of Trustees for Scarborough Sanitary District. There's a meeting next week, and they're going to decide essentially which direction they'd like to go, whether it's move it to the public right of way or keep it kind of allocate on the site at this time. Nothing's prohibiting from the force main to be constructed in the future, even if this proposal went forward. As far as the applicant, we're fine with either way. We're happy to kind of construct either force main. And it really just matters if the Board of Trustees wants to move forward with it. So we're waiting that, and then we'll update the plans as soon as we have that determination. And I can explain that more in detail. It might be a little confusing trying to talk through it, but I can walk the board through that if requested. There's also underground single-phase power proposed for the project here as well. So grading and drainage design, we have a gravel wetland proposed at the rear of the site on this, what we're calling stormwater lot, in the center here, as well as each house lot's going to have a roofline drip edge filter, which is a nice LED stormwater control measure. The project also has received, and it was in the application package, main stormwater law permit, as well as an Army Corps permit. A few town comments I wanted to touch on real quick before I wrap this up. The town had a great idea about a fence abutting the railroad property for lots 2, 3, and 4, which you can see is highlighted by this blue line here. Headed over the aerial here to show that there's wooded buffer that is proposed to remain for these residences, but the fence to supplement that buffer during the winter period makes a lot of sense. So we will add that to the plans moving forward. And then the sidewalk discussion. So this was discussed with the peer reviewer as well as the town at DRC meeting. And essentially the idea is that we were proposing a sidewalk along Trestle Way for the residents of, essentially just the residents of those 8 lots there. And there's an idea to better serve the greater public would to be allocate that effort of sidewalk along Trestle Way to extending the Highland Ave multipurpose path a little bit further. And that's shown in red down here. What that'll do is once the 4 Highland Ave development constructs their portion of the sidewalk that's under their approval, Trestle Way will construct it up to the project entrance plus that red piece, and that'll get it to the church driveway. And what that does is then the sidewalk kind of goes off premise a little bit there. Easements have to be obtained, but there's a good portion there that'll be usable for the fields that are down by the church as well as the general public. So we thought that was a nice trade-off that the applicant's willing to do and put that effort on the off-site that'll be much more usable for the town of Scarborough. We'll still keep the pedestrian crossing that's shown there with our FBs. So again, it's just given the limited volume on that roadway, it's reasonable that residents can walk on the side of the road for that. And that's all I have. Seeking preliminary subdivision approval tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. This item is open for public comment. Anybody wishing to make public comments regarding this agenda item, please step up to the podium, your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm Jim Meserve. I live at 26 Highland. We're the lot that's going to abut the two things right on Highland Avenue. Is it going to be anything? We have like a small tree line on the back of our lots all the way down to my house or whatever and around my property. Is they going to put anything in there, or are they going to strip the trees and stuff? He said they're going to put a fence on the back for the railroad trestle. We're kind of curious what they're going to plan to do that way. I know my lot happens to be facing most of the wetlands. But you know, there's 2 or 3 of the other neighbors that I've talked to, and they're just kind of curious if there's anything planned for that, and also to protect the wildlife. We have like 12 or 15 deer that come out morning and night, and cross over our land, especially right on the corner where we are. They come around the wood line and cross there, so we're kind of concerned about wildlife, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone else? You said somebody was on, oh,
Just one
go ahead.
question.
Yep.
My name's Adam Weatherby. I live and own 31 Highland Ave. And I just had a question in regards to water. I know we're going to talk about sewer in a week or so. But my property is, I believe, the only one on Highland Avenue that's not attached to public water. And the moratorium on the road in 2022 came without warning from the DOT. So now we're not able to cut into the road without paying to open that road up. So didn't know if those 2 lots are going to connect to public water, if there's the ability to tie in at the same time to public water. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. Anybody online?
Andre, you could talk now.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, this is Andre Canetti. I'm on 14 Highland Avenue, so I'm the house and lot right next to where this road entrance is going to be. And the few questions I had was, one was the utility pole that is designed for this underground subdivision. It looks like in the plans that they intend to, or they're proposing to place a utility pole pretty much right in front or on my lot within the easement, of course, but still on my side of the road, where I have a really old, good birch tree that's pretty much right there on this line of my lot. It's still majority on my side, but they're planning on putting a utility pole right there. My only question is, why can't that utility pole go on the other side of the street within their subdivision? I know it's coming off the transformer pole across the street in the church lot, but I'm just wondering why that utility pole is being placed right there on my side of the lot and in by that birch tree. And then the second question is, when they start, if this ever does get proposed, and this could go along with all my neighbors on that back end, are they going to put up, because some kind of, they've been out there staking these property lines, so on and so forth. And I know, if this does go into effect, there's going to be a lot of heavy traffic in and out. I'm assuming this is where they would probably bring in most of, cutting down the trees, so on and so forth. Are they going to provide any kind of a construction fence that will kind of barricade my open lot and everybody else's lot. I have a young son, I have a 13-year-old son, a dog, that utilizes that area. And I'd really appreciate if a possibility of a construction fence, not just a silt fence to prevent erosion. I know that is kind of coming up in a few spots, but a construction fence that will actually barricade and have us and protect the safetiness of my family, my pets, so on and so forth. So those are my two main points. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andre. At this point, anybody else? All right, a few questions. Drew, I know you're good on taking notes and everything. Do you want to address any of those comments that were made?
Sure. And again, trying to follow along real quick here, but I believe the 26 Highland and the wildlife and the buffer, I think that's on the portion of the open space that's not being touched. I can double check that for you and I'll have that answer for next meeting. But the intent is also to screen any residents along the back of any of those houses there. So I know I've talked to the applicant a little bit about how do we want to do that, whether it's additional fencing, it could be beyond the planning board approvals, can have fencing for single family lots or additional buffers that we could consider as well. At 31 Highland Ave, the water, I think that's reasonable if we're opening the road up. I can talk to the applicant about, how that works out, cost sharing type effort, but we've actually done that for a portion on Highland Ave for another project. We had in a butter request to put in a sewer sleeve and they paid for the sewer sleeve, but it worked out for the restoration for everything. So that ended up well, so I can take a look at that. And then as far as for the online for 14 Highland, I'll have to look at the utility pole location. I didn't think we have a pole we're pulling off from the main line that needs, because of the riser, we needed just another pole to get it down underground. I can look at that location, and in conflict. Certainly, we don't want to touch any trees, even if they're in the right of way, if we don't have to. So we can look at that location if there's something that's conflicting there. And I'll certainly pass along the construction fencing question along the back of that lot there. I think it's probably a good idea as well. And I'll check with the applicant on that. So certainly things that I think are all doable from the applicant's standpoint.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate that. At this point, I'll open it up to my colleagues here for their input. This is a preliminary subdivision review. Gives us an opportunity to see what's going on here and maybe make some recommendations or some thoughts that we may have. But I'll not call on anybody specifically. But Ben?
Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
hang on. I guess I have
Never
to
mind.
officially close the public hearing section. Done. All right, go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Got a few questions here. I definitely I like the idea of continuing adding more sidewalks, as B&L mentioned in their memo. But one question I have there, since the sidewalk is on the opposite side of the road as the Trestle Way subdivision, you're going to have a mid-block crossing, basically. I mean, yeah, there's a Trestle Way that'll be there, but it's not going to be a stoplight, obviously, or even a stop sign for Highland Avenue. And I know that this is an area that's been of concern for speed for many residents. I've driven this road many times myself, and I know a lot of people drive pretty fast through there. And if you're adding a crosswalk, I really think we need to have definitely the appropriate signage, but thinking about maybe if we could do a speed table or something. I'm not sure that's necessarily under the applicant's purview for that. Maybe it is, but we need to really think about the safety of people trying to use that crosswalk to go from the sidewalk to this new subdivision, just based on the speed that I know happens there.
Certainly, yeah, and I can address that if you'd like. So, and we certainly want to care about the safety too, obviously. We're providing rectangular flashing beacons, which are the flashing ones. And then it was actually a comment early on in the design process from a peer reviewer to have advanced warning as well. So just as you come around the corner and from the other side, there's advanced warning signage. It actually technically doesn't meet the requirement to put those in if you look at DOT requirements, but given the location and the history that, everything you mentioned, we thought it was a good idea as well. So we put those in. We've checked it for sight distance and stopping sight distances. And it meets all those standards. There was a comment from the peer reviewer to actually physically check it rather than just on plan, but in real life, which we're confident it meets as well. So we'll have some stakes out there as well, verifying that. So we have done some precautions. I can speak to what is proposed in the plans and far in terms of the flashing beacons as well as the advanced warning that we're providing.
Thanks, and we'll be looking at that, more as this advances. Is there intended to be an HOA for these, this subdivision?
Yeah, there will be a homeowner association, correct?
Okay, and so the homeowners association would be responsible for maintaining the fence that you would be proposing, because you're having one fence along 3 property lines along the railroad?
I can review the actual specifics, whether they're on just those 3 lot owners or not. We talked, we're kind of working through the process of how to kind of legally maintain that in terms of the lot owners and stuff. But we can answer that question for next time. It's a good question. So
Yeah. One suggestion or thought is, I know that on the Chamberlain Road subdivision that they completed, I know it wasn't you guys, but they ended up with a wooded buffer instead of a fence because of the difficulty of figuring out who's going to be maintaining that fence over time and for the safety of, the kids, and that's just down the road. Overall, I think it looks like a pretty good subdivision plan. I noticed there was some, discussions of trails, going through the conserved area a little bit. Would that intended to be for the public or for HOA members only?
I can check on that. I think the intention initially may have just been HOA members, but let me, I can get back to you on that.
Sure. And then just in general, I do appreciate you addressing some of the concerns of the public. I know that it's a planning board meeting so that they can express their questions, but it's not necessarily on us to force you to answer, but we do appreciate that you were able to.
Mhm.
I think that's all that I have for now, Mr. Chair. Overall, I think looks like it's a pretty good project with a good start. So thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Rachel?
Yeah, a couple of questions. One, the lot 7 with the hammerhead, where's the driveway gonna go?
It's on just the inside of the hammerhead. So as you're coming up the road just before the hammerhead on the right, there's a small 20-foot window before the lot line that we can get a driveway in. So it's not coming off the hammerhead.
Okay, so it's not gonna be encroaching on a buffer or anything else? You've got enough space to ensure that all buffer requirements are met there?
Correct.
Okay. I also like the idea of the trails that you had. I'm assuming that they are roughly following the utility easements. Is that correct?
Correct. If the force main still ends up being in that location, that's the idea. So
And if it doesn't, what happens?
the trail would still happen. The idea is we'd probably meander it. There's not a ton of wooded vegetation in that specific area, but obviously we would stake it out in the field for better areas than just necessarily where the.
Would you be looking at wooden bridges through the wetland area or?
We haven't explored that yet, but we can certainly look at that.
Well, I would appreciate when it comes back to us that you finish the exploration so that we know what that's going to look like. And let me also recommend a couple of benches at the trailhead for people just plain to sit down there and then walk along. Then I had another question. One of the consultants mentioned the man-made vernal pools and asked how somebody knows that they're man-made. You have that answer yet?
Yeah, so, and we're going to have a follow-up submission too from our wetland scientists that are preparing a memo for it. But essentially, it's just like it sounds. It's clearly excavated material, and they could actually see the material. Someone had excavated it and then piled it directly next to it, and without keeping it super simple. That's essentially how they determined it was man-made, and that's why it was mapped that way. So we have a full memo coming from our wetland scientists supporting that, but that was the general answer anyway.
All right, very good. And there was the question of encroachment of somebody's garden.
Yeah, it was
How
one
you
of,
working that out?
is one of the lots. I'll have to check on, with the applicant if there's been any discussions regarding that or relocation of that. So, the aerial, I'm unsure if it's still there at this point. I think the aerial may have been a little old, but we'll double check on that and have that.
Okay, I appreciate that, and that's all the questions I have. I think, you know, all in all, it's a good project.
Thanks, Rachel. Roger has his hand up, then I'll go to you, James. Roger?
Thank you. I think this looks like a pretty good project as well. When I first started reviewing the material, the initial thoughts I had was basically traffic on Highland Avenue. And I wanted to actually ask Angela, what is the current status of completing, you know, the sidewalks and the paths and everything along Highland Avenue? Can you give us any update on that?
Sure. The town council did fund the design of a multi-use path along Highland Ave that does stretch from Black Point Road down to Chamberlain. And that project, when we put it out for estimates, came out pretty high, and it's been kind of shelved for a little bit, trying to figure out priorities and where we are investing for construction. It doesn't mean that that won't be moving forward. It means we're just trying to put it in the list for construction activity. So as other projects, it also gives us the advantage of having a design completed. And so as Drew mentioned, for Highland Ave, that project came through in this planning board, realizing we had that design, got implemented as part of their offsites. Again, with this project, Drew mentioned about extending it to, we had discussed at least the driveway and maybe looking at costs within the development instead of doing sidewalks within the 8-lot. Kind of utilizing those funds in a more efficient way for the greater public. So if there's additional funds beyond what they're constructing, that would go into, say, the in lieu fee for sidewalks, so that we can hopefully in the future keep extending that multi-use path along. My first goal would be to get to the Little League field. I think that would be a good connection. There's also the park that's behind the Little League field. So that's really, I think, would be a good benefit for that whole neighborhood in that area. As I said, we would just keep kind of picking away as we kind of go through, and at some point it will reach the top of that list, and we'll be back in front of council probably for construction funds, but it's just not at that point yet. It is part of our townwide transportation study, though, I'd mentioned, so it is on the list.
Good. The reason I brought it up is because well, we've had the other project there right at the turn where they're building the townhouses. That's been approved. There's another house that has already been constructed right on Black Point Road, right at the corner. And one of the things I recall discussing when we were talking about that other project was having some sort of signage when you're heading west on Black Point Road and you're swinging down onto Highland, to have some sort of a signage to warn drivers that there's, whether it's playground ahead or whatever it is, something there. But I don't believe there's anything there, Angela.
No,
And
it is part of their offsite, though. They just haven't completed it. And I believe this spring they'll be out there. There's advisory signs that will go up as part when that sidewalk is installed. So it's part of their offsite improvements.
okay,
I think you will see some of those signage goes up. We also talked with the applicant for this project and talking about, as Ben had mentioned, looking at some more enhanced crossing pieces, whether that's talking about it, not only like advanced warning signs, but maybe making those lit as well as you're pushing the button. I think you're right, Roger, as you come through those S turns, people then start, picking up that speed. And so that's why advisory signs are going to be in place to go at a slower speed through those S turns. And then
Yeah.
hopefully they would see a lit kind of sign that someone's in a crosswalk.
yeah, I think it's really important to get sidewalks at least to the ball field, because, that ball field, there's a lot of kids, even kids who aren't playing the games, they're there with their parents. And, these homes, I assume, there'll be children in these homes. These are single-family homes, so, and it'd be very easy for them. Plus the other homes there's also a home on the market right now, right opposite this other one we just approved. So all of a sudden, this little village is getting, there's a lot of activity right there, and I think it's very important, traffic-wise, that we get some control over what's going on there. But I appreciate Drew responding to the various abutters and their concerns. And I think it looks like a good project. So as long as we can take care of the traffic and actually the speed going through there, so I think that's all I have at the moment.
Thanks, Roger. James?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. First, thank you for your willingness to work with the abutter for with their desire to connect to public utilities. Is 31 Highland the only home in that section without public water? Yes, okay. Cool, all right. If there were more than one, I would say maybe it might be worth reaching out to them in case somebody else would want to tie into it. But since it's just one, it's okay. I mimic the comments of my other colleagues, would like to see fencing. Also would like to see maybe some additional trees planted in here. Existing in this area, I know there's the wetland that you're maintaining your 25-foot buffer around, thank you. But in the Highland space, I mean, right where several of the homes are going is pretty dense with trees in there. I'd like to see some sort of some kind of trees replanted, whether on the sidewalk or along some of the front of the properties, or certainly in the back of these properties to give some just added natural buffering to your existing abutters. I think having trees there is really important, and as we're increasing our development in this town, I think we need to be focused on replanting and just replacing a lot of this greenery as well, not just grass or open fields, but trees as well. It maybe shows the existing trees larger than 8 inches in diameter or something like that on plan, just for our reference. The sidewalk that you're proposing on Highland, would that replace the sidewalk that you're planning on Trestle?
Yeah, that would be the idea.
Okay. It's a pretty short, in this, just that amount that you have shown in red, right, Autumn? That's short and piece. Okay, I'll revisit that later. I guess my next question I have is, since the intent of these homes are for single families, am I correct?
Correct.
Is there any, besides the trail, is there any kind of public green space for kids to sort of collect and sort of jointly play in this area?
Not specifically, but I will say the open space is mostly open, so that opportunity is there. And Jim, just to address the sidewalk real quick, if you don't mind. So the town had thought of this too, of, oh, that sidewalk looks longer than what that is. And so what we're going to do is come up with a cost estimate for the Trestle Way sidewalk and utilize that for the extension of the Highland Ave. Anything left over would be an impact fee. So it'd be an
Gotcha.
equivalent. The Highland Ave sidewalk's gonna be more expensive because it's 10-foot wide. It's also, there's a road constructed there, so you gotta think of traffic control and all that stuff. But that aside, it would be a comparative cost allocation would be,
Okay.
is the intent for that, so.
Could we see that in our packet as well next time when it
Absolutely.
comes around? Thank you.
Absolutely.
I guess my last one with just the green space. I know lot 7 is really small. I mean, that's 0.17 acres of buildable envelope there. I'm not saying you replace a lot with a green space, but I mean, we don't necessarily want to have kids playing in the wetlands. So I guess maybe throw some more consideration into having some kind of enlargement to a public green space, either for use for the folks here in this HOA or having it entirely public for folks. again, my comments to the board here is the more we're putting in these homes and increasing the density of our development here, we need to have places for everybody to go. And if you don't have a backyard, you don't have a front yard, then all of a sudden you're playing in the road. And that's just a natural thing to do, but this is also Highland Avenue. And we're already spent half this discussion talking about traffic. So just something that we should just keep aware of as we're moving forward with this. I mean, otherwise, this is a development that can be allowed to go here. So I don't have any objection to it. Thank you.
Thanks, James. That leaves up to me, but my colleagues have done a good job vetting this. I too am concerned about the access across the street. So any kind of traffic calming that we can do around those curves is really paramount to the pursuit of a sidewalk that can get to the Little League field. And being a baseball guy, I know how much kids love to go to field. So let's take some serious thought on that and see if we can get that advanced so that we have a way in which our residents can understand that this is a neighborhood now and traffic has got to be maintained. The curves itself do a little bit, but there's nothing better than some sort of signaling that allows pedestrians a little more freedom to get across as they need to. Any thoughts of taking some of this open space and conveying it to the town for conservation purposes?
As in like a third party holding it? No, but under the conservation rules, it's permanently conserved just under the open space. So,
Yep.
But other than that,
I mean,
no, I don't.
just throwing it out there. I realize that, but I'm just trying to get us to our goal, the 2030 goal, and any way we can get it, we'll take it acre by acre if we have to. But at this point, do you have any questions for us, Drew, as you get ready to put your final package together and bring it in front of us?
I do not. I have my marching orders. Thank you.
You do. Roger, have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to mention something. James had mentioned about some green space in that area within very short walking distance. Besides the ball field, there's a town park right there, and there's a you know, a little like a playground right there too as well. So I really do think there's enough open, space for the kids and everything. The primary concern would be getting across the street and getting to those areas. So I just wanted to mention that if people weren't familiar with that area.
Thanks, Roger. All right, with that, I do have a draft motion and yep, okay. I do have a preliminary subdivision motion. I move to approve the preliminary subdivision plan of Trestle Way subdivision proposed by Rivera Construction Company Incorporated. The project is depicted in plan set prepared by Goro Palmer dated 1/21/25. Findings. The proposal is for a 10-lot conservation subdivision at 10 and 30 Highland Avenue. The board finds this project meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance with the conditions below. Conditions: 1, address the planning board comments discussed at the 2/18/25 meeting. This includes address the Scarborough Sanitary District requirements, update the plan set to include stockade fence for lots 2, 3, and 4, update plan set to include sidewalk extension on Highland Avenue, and address opportunities for additional trees and open space. Number 2, address the comments in the staff review memo dated February 18th, 2025. Number 3, address the comments in the traffic peer review memo dated February 3rd, 2025. And number 4, address the comments in the Haley Ward peer review memo dated February 4th, 2025. This shall be reviewed by the planning department. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Rachel. Doreen, you want to take the roll?
Rachel Hendrickson. Yes. James Hebert,
Yes.
Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Roger Bailey,
Yes.
Yes.
Great. We'll see you again, I'm sure.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for jumping on some of those questions. I figured they were in your wheelhouse, so I had confidence that you could make inroads. All right, the next item for discussion is 4.02 Crossroad Holdings LLC is requesting a subdivision amendment review for Phase 3, Second Amendment of the Town Center District located on the Scarborough Downs Road Assessor Map R052 Lot 4. You taking this one, or
No, Helen.
Helen, you got the reins again?
Thank you. I'll try to speak up this time. Yeah, so Crossroads Holdings is requesting subdivision amendment review for Phase 3 Second Amendment of the Downs Town Center District located on Scarborough Downs Road. And just for a bit of background, the subdivision was initially approved in June of 2023. It was first amended in October of last year, and the Second Amendment was reviewed by this board in December of last year. It falls within the Crossroads Plan Development Zone and is also subject to the Downtown Center Master Plan, which was amended most recently on January 21st, 2025, and the subdivision ordinance as well. So this amendment includes the expansion of Lot 2 to the north, as well as the creation of lots 10, 11, 12, and 13. It also includes expansion opportunities for the remaining Crossroads land with proposed right-of-ways and the associated infrastructure connections. It also includes proposed roadway improvements to the remaining Scarborough Downs Road segment that connects to the roundabout that was previously discussed, presented in Phase 2. Some notes from the December Planning Board discussion included overhead utilities, traffic and pedestrian concerns, including signalization at the bypass intersections, existing conserved area, as well as future conserved areas and proposed critter crossings, which we've discussed, as well as siting for the future building. So with that, I'll pass it to the applicant for questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Helen. We go to public comment, right? Or no, the applicant. Drew, you got the torch again, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
Paying
Yeah,
you overtime, I trust, huh?
I hope so. We'll see. I would, and if Autumn, if you can make Dan and Erica online a panelist too, if you get a chance. Okay, I think I'm sharing my screen again. So again, Drew Gagnon with Goral Palmer representing Crossroad Holdings LLC. Dan Bacon is online. I'm going to pass it to him. He should be online anyway. He should be online, but we'll see. We'll see. And Erica Guidabani is also from Tool Design Group. She's our urban transportation design expert. Just here for questions if needed. So this project's been a long time coming. We've been in front of the board a few different times for it, so we're very excited. This project is going to support the next two items in your agenda as well. So this is the Town Center District Planning Board Phase 3 subdivision. It's just a graphic to orient the board on kind of where we are on the Downs property. The blue dashed line is the approved master plan area for Town Center. The bluish purplish hatch, as well as the yellow shade, is Phase 1 and 2 of Town Center subdivision that are approved. Phase 1 is pretty close to being completed, with the exception of kind of the sidewalks and stuff. It looks very similar to the site walk we did with the board a few months ago. And Phase 2 is getting under construction here within the next few weeks or months. That's the extension of Downs Road and creating the intermed lot to refresh the board. And then Phase 3 is the red area here, which kind of filling in the gaps a little bit, as well as modifying some lots and additional right-of-ways. This is our subdivision plan of the entire Town Center area. This amendment's really focused in the kind of the top left half. You can see my mouse of the plan. So this amendment will modify Lot 2 to this, what we're calling a backwards L-shaped, and it'll create for lack of a better name, the bypass road right now. That's going to connect Downs Road to Market Street and provide frontage for lot 10 and then lots 11, 12, and 13 that are going to surround the bypass road. In addition, this amendment is extending the Scarborough Downs right-of-way between the roundabout where the Costco and Innovation Way intersection is and where we left off in phase 2 by Intermed. So that'll create a fully public new roadway from Payne Road all the way down to Route 1. This plan just shows a little bit more detail on exactly what we're proposing. It shows the roadway limits. You can also see the modified and extended turn lanes that were provided since the last application. So this includes, about 200 feet or so of the bypass road approach on Downs Road over on this end. And then on the southern portion of the plan, about 185 feet or so of left and right turn lane out of the bypass road as well. So in general, most of our discussion the last few months have been centered around traffic. We're pleased with the latest traffic peer review memo, and we're happy to address all those remaining concerns. We've had a lot of back and forth working with the peer reviewer and working with the town on getting to the point of agreeing to the traffic study. As we've talked before, it's very complicated because there's a lot of projected trip ends that we're trying to account for. Ultimately, what we agreed to a 15% shared use reduction on the total traffic volumes for this modeling purposes. As the design engineer and Erica will say as well, we certainly think there's going to be more reduction than that in real life, but we've modeled everything with that standard 15% reduction. That provides for a level of service that's acceptable. So above a level of service D is how they call it. It's acceptable to the town as well as it meets ordinances for the bypass road intersections at Downs Road and Market Street. So those are still stock controlled intersections where Downs is free flowing and so is Market Street. Basically the additional turn lanes and their shared traffic reductions significantly helped those volumes and the delay time. So we did focus on delay and queuing in these areas that were provided in our package. I can get into that a little bit more if the board would like me to. I have questions, but I will kind of keep it high level for right now. And then there were a few other comments that were brought up that we addressed right in the front of the comment response letter. Again, I'm happy to go through one of those if there's any further comments. At this point, I think I see Dan on there. I'm going to pass it to Dan to talk a little bit about the conservation area.
Thanks, Drew. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Sorry I can't be there in person. This is school vacation week, but I'm joining virtually and pleased to be participating. This graphic shows what we've done in terms of addressing planning board comments around additional open space. I think we're exceeding the requirement of the ordinance significantly, but also wanted to be responsive to staff and planning board's comments in terms of open space connectivity between the east and west side of Downs Road, and also some additional conservation area that's actually in the lower left of the screen on the Acura site all the way out to the Willowdale corridor, and also update the board in terms of our approach to conservation. So the red area is already restricted with Maine DEP. There's a conservation restriction that applies to that area that was part of a prior site location of development approval. And to add the same level of a restriction and to exceed just it being open space and owned by the association, which is the remainder of open space within the project, but to meet a higher standard and add additional restriction by a third party, we're proposing to add the blue area to that same conservation restriction approach. So it would go from a 9.8 acre conservation restriction with Maine DEP to an upwards of, I think, around 23 acres. I can't see on my screen the exact acreage, but it's about 22 acres on the west side of Scarborough Downs Road, an additional acre and a half, I believe, in blue on the east side of Scarborough Downs Road. And that was, I think, one of the only kind of major staff comments in the last memo. So I want to touch on that and provide some specifics. And I think I'll turn it back to you, Drew, to continue your presentation or wrap it up. Thanks.
Sure, thanks, Dan. Yeah, that's all we had for this evening. Again, happy to answer any questions or talk about anything further. I'll turn it back to the board. Thanks.
Thanks, Drew. This item is open for public comment. Anybody from the public wishing to make a comment? Feel free to do so at this time. No one? Nobody's interested in your subdivision or your plans here. Right, then I'll close it. Public comment is closed, and remind the board that we have seen this before, and they are seeking to move forward, and we'll talk about the use of this amendment with the next two agenda items. But at this point, I'll just open it up to anybody. Roger, you got your hand up already, so you can start it off.
I'm raring to go here, yeah.
I like it.
Reading over this material from the traffic peer reviewer, a lot of this whole thing was about, to me, was about queuing. That's what I took out of reading all this material. A lot of concern about queuing, and I think that is going to be really critical, how people get in and out of this area, especially not interfering with the Market Square area. But I was kind of curious if Drew could answer this question. Where the bypass road intersects the Scarborough Downs Road as well as Market Street, was there ever any considerations to putting roundabouts in those two locations?
Yeah, certainly, Roger. And we did take a look at that. So at respective to the bypass and Market Street intersection, so the one on the south, a single lane roundabout actually it performed less from a level of service and a queuing standpoint.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you want to think about it this way, you have a free flow moving on Market Street, so you're basically start restricting the main line in order to try to help a little bit of the bypass road. So in a real simple sense, we did review that there and were able to determine it didn't work as well as just a stop controlled intersection. On the top right of this plan, which is Downs and Bypass Road, it's really space limitations. There's wetland ditch along the road across from the pump station, and the pump station, which is under construction right now, needs a specific amount of area to operate. And then trying to get angles and approaches, if you remember from the Innovation Way intersection, there's a lot of science behind how you approach a roundabout. It would make that very difficult to accomplish in that area.
Okay, so again, reading through the material, I'm assuming then that you folks and staff and the peer reviewer have basically come to an agreement on all the left-hand turns, turn lanes, and the queuing concerns and all that stuff. Is that a fair assumption on my part?
I can chime in on that. Yes, I think we're at agreement. I will say, Roger, I appreciate your comment about the roundabout because it was a conversation to make sure, really at this stage in the game, we want to make sure we have enough right of way to do any improvements that might be needed down the road. Because obviously this is going to keep building and building. And so we don't want to over design, but we want to make sure that the town is set up in a good place so that as infrastructure is needed and things become more complicated in there as far as traffic goes, that we don't limit our options, I guess I'll say. So that was our role is to play is kind of looking at the future and kind of build out.
And where staff is satisfied with the
So as we sit today, we are satisfied with what's moving forward.
okay, good. All right. The reason I thought about the roundabouts is because they have one over in Westbrook at the Market Basket. And so that's what it made me think about that. Okay, that's my take on this particular agenda item is the traffic, the queuing, the turn lanes, can the vehicles, the trucks and everything get in in and out, the way they have to without causing any undue inconvenience to people. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. James?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see on sheet C102, you have overhead electrical and telecom that's going to be going along the access road all the way around the corner. How far is that eventually going to go?
Yeah, Jim. So it goes to, if you can see my hand right here, right where the Downs property line pinches in, it essentially terminates right where my hand is. That's just to get the main line over to the last lot, every other lot. And then obviously all services are served underground for it. So it essentially it's just along the rear of the access road here, and then it cuts across this lot up against the wetland edge.
I guess why, I mean, thinking about what Angela's saying for setting us up for the future, I mean, why wouldn't we want to bury the utilities here if they're going to be buried elsewhere in this area? I'm thinking sun sets in the west in that direction. Folks are going to be in their high rises looking in that direction at night. It would look a lot nicer if the utilities were buried, especially since you're already going to have trees out there and the pedestrian level light fixtures.
Yeah, and we reviewed this carefully, Jim, when we were developing the, so part of the master plan is basically once we get into the town center area, that it needs to drop underground, and that transition point is right at the pump station. So we're really quite above the agreed upon limits in the master plan already. In addition, the wetlands aren't going away on the north end of the site. So any development opportunity over there isn't going to happen. So placing the electrical lines up against where there's already trees and everything, where, views aren't going to be obstructed was, in our opinion, made a lot of sense. And then we also want to note that we're not really promoting pedestrians around this corner part. We want them to kind of funnel through, and the Downs team is going to talk about that in the next sketch plans. But that's evident by not proposing sidewalks for a portion of the bypass road along there. We're not really promoting in that service area. We're not really promoting pedestrians walking in that specific area. We want them to kind of guide them to other areas of the site. So that was our reasoning for that selection there for overhead.
Fair argument. I don't disagree with that. Don't necessarily need to have a sidewalk in there. As you said, the intent is for that to be for utility vehicles serving the market basket and other businesses there. I guess I'm thinking further down the future when these poles eventually deteriorate and they're going to fall, and they're going to fall towards the wetlands, or they're going to fall into the road. I don't know. I guess I'd like to see another justification for having these above ground other than besides cost.
Yeah, I'd like to just chime in on that, Drew. I think there's also a CMP requirement challenge in terms of how you approach underground power on this back loop road, which really is the service end of the town center district. There's significant complication in terms of running underground in that location in terms of the requirement to loop the system. It's easily looped within Downs Road and Market Street in the areas that are going to be kind of the urban center of town center. And it's very challenging to loop it in that location with the layout of the project. So there is other parties that certainly control, I think, as you know, in terms of CMP and their requirements that really make it a very challenging layout, in addition to it not being likely to be noticed in this part of the town center.
And CMP's preference was to be above ground, not below ground on the road?
CMP's preference is always to be above ground. In our experience, they accept underground, but.
Okay. I'm just thinking for the future, for maintenance and issues that may happen. Trees fall on overhead lines. They don't really bother the bottom ones, but that's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Rachel?
Yeah, one picky question. You were supposed to record the subdivision in January, the last subdivision. Did you do that?
Yes, we did.
Thank you. Wanted to make sure. Then I've got another minor question, I guess. I took a look at the cross sections for the critter crossings, and I must confess, I have no idea how high they are. So what size critter can cross there?
There's an 18-inch vertical clear opening, so any critter under 18 inches.
So at least raccoons, but probably not fox.
A fox probably could.
Okay. They shrink
Smaller,
down just
yeah,
a little,
they-
keep their head down. All right. Then queuing bothers me, I guess, because as we take a look at the next sketch plans with the proposed, I guess you're calling them driveways, and going to call them private ways because that's essentially what you're setting up. On Market Street, you get to, I'm looking at C101, you get to the Loop Road, and that's fine. And then you come to another access to the left off of Market Street, heading towards the center. There's no queuing there?
Well, there will be queuing in that left turn lane as it enters the driveway. We didn't evaluate that portion. Basically, what we were focused on was that the intent of the bypass road is to create streamlined and actually model the level delay in the queuing for those two intersections, because the intent of it is to move traffic around the town center. Basically, the thought process that we agreed with the town and peer reviewers, you kind of cross those two intersections and you get into the town center. We're less worried about queuing and delay. We're more worried about safety and kind of that pedestrian experience. So it's just balancing it. The reason why I went through, so again, the level of effort for actually modeling the queuing and level of service for those two intersections was really just because that needed to be thought of as a really well operating intersection in terms of level of service. Interior to that in the town center, there's other factors that come into play which will combat queuing to a degree. And as well as we're hoping that there's just less vehicles traveled in general with people walking and bicycle trips and all that. So that's the idea. So there will be queuing. There's going to be queuing and delay in the town center. We've always said that from the start. They're not modeled on these diagrams because the focus was on those two bypass road intersections.
What do you think is going to be the traffic situation in between the Loop Road and that first access private drive?
So
They're fairly close together, so
They are. And, we're providing a left turn lane too, to facilitate that. So they're not blocking the through traffic going to go through. Our master traffic analysis incorporated everything. So I don't want to just say we ignored the intersections. It certainly did. And I can pull that information for you of what the expected queue is there. I think the important thing is that there's multiple entrances into this site where if one entrance does appear a little backed up, there's other options, and there's multiple other options as you travel along the roadway. So that's just the main idea behind it.
all right. And as we get to the other sketch plans and to the rest of the site, please understand that I've got some concerns about the parking, the lots themselves, the queuing, the access to them, what they're going to look like. So I'm going to keep probably raising that issue. So the more you can set my mind at ease now, the better off you're going to be at the next meeting.
Can I just chime in there a little bit?
Sure.
Drew? Hi, Erica Guidaboni, tool design, traffic engineer by trade. Been helping out the team a little bit. I know I worked on the Innovation Way roundabout and met all you folks at the town center meetings a couple years ago. I just wanted to mention or kind of add to your answer your question a little bit further here. It is actually laid out the same way as the other intersection further south on Market Street at the bypass road. So the left and the right turn lane on the side street and the through and the left turn lane into the driveway just north. So you have the same layout. And then I was just looking at the volumes and they are lower at this location. So I think the peer reviewer and Drew's team really focused in on the bypass road as it's kind of the more critical one in terms of volume. So if that one's functioning well, so would this one. So it will absolutely show a level of service that's better than the one that you got a little bit more details on. I think your question is certainly fair around the queuing, but I will just add that this location should operate at a higher level than the one that you got more information on today.
I appreciate that. I am not a traffic engineer by any means. But I also do understand human nature and how human nature works when it gets to stop, when it has to stop a couple of times before it can get to the turn left, let's say, to the place that it wants to get. So that's the visual that I have when I start to look at streets like this and parking lots and the way the buildings are set up. So I'm just letting you know that that's how I look at things. So I appreciate the response there. That's helpful to me. But this is how I'm going to be looking at things. Yeah, go ahead, Angela.
I also wanted to actually add to the conversation that we did have, it was quite a lengthy conversation around traffic, and really from staff's point of view was really looking at that loop road and taking the comments from previous times when we did the master planning, and that bypass road was really crucial because we know it's going to get congested kind of, and that's what we want, everybody going slow, and it's a walkable, bikeable place in the center. And so we actually went back and forth a lot of saying our focus needs to be, people are going to take the most efficient route if they're not going to the center. The bypass needs to function so that people are going smoothly around. And so that's where kind of we focused on. There is going to be queuing everywhere. There's going to be other issues, but if we can keep that as efficient as possible. And that goes back to what you're saying is now we start looking at, we looked at that as a subdivision, but as you get into the site plans, more detail has to come out. So more of the conversation around what Roger mentioned earlier about trucks. So when are trucks happening? Because we don't want those in peak hours and things like that. Those all come into play with the site plan. So we also struggle to where that line is. So just wanted to appreciate that staff was in kind of the same mind frame of that.
Yeah, this to me, this whole process right now is difficult in that it's very difficult to talk about one part of it without talking about one of the site plans or one of the sketch plans. So I thought I would start now so that folks have an understanding of how I'm looking at it. And as we get into the site plans, I'm going to be looking at them from the perspective of human interaction with the road and human nature when things happen, like they can't get someplace they want to fast. I certainly appreciate and I understand the effort to be clear on the loop road, because I remember all of those discussions and the fact that we wanted to ensure that there was such a way, an efficient way to move people around the possible congestion right at the intersection of Market Street and Downs. So I appreciate the effort that went into there. I noticed that you did put in a suggestion for a conduit so that lights could go in at some point at the end of the loop road and at the intersection with Downs. I think that's smart. I think planning, as Angela talked about, planning to have planning to grow, to set this up so that this possibility for growth is smart. And I think now is the time for anything that we see that we think may come in the future as an issue, we bring it to the forefront so people have a chance to chew it over, really, to take a look at it, to think about how to make it work best and for the long term. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think some of my fellow board members have done a pretty good job covering a lot of the issues. One thing that I wanted to touch on or ask about, I guess, is whatever happened to the discussion of a mixed-use path along the Downs Road extension? Is that still
Yeah,
in
that's still
here?
proposed in there, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
That's an 8-foot wide or 10-foot wide path on the north side, or?
It's on the east side of Downs Road. I think it's 10 feet. I apologize if I'm wrong. It's 8 or 10. I believe it's 10. So
Okay.
Along Scarborough Downs Road, it connects up to the roundabout where that
Yeah.
path left off, and it connects to Town Center where that also left off. So that did not get removed from the application.
Maybe
That's still in
because
there.
it was been so satisfied, I haven't found any, I haven't been seeing a lot of stuff written about it in here. I'm sure it's buried somewhere. Okay.
It's on the plan.
I want to make sure it didn't get just struck off and forgotten about.
It did not get
Alrighty.
removed.
Yeah, and in that case, I know we've hashed over, the the wetlands and the critter crossings quite a bit, and we do appreciate the effort you guys have put in and the town and everybody to making sure that we get hoping to get to a reasonable solution there, because it's really important to make sure that we have, you know, connected wetlands, but also a functioning road. So I think that's really all that I have at this time, Mr. Chair. My fellow members have done a good job. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I don't want to neglect your attendance here. And I don't know how deep you got into this. I mean, I spent a week in Putacana, so I didn't do a whole lot of reading of stuff. But if you wanna, it's kind of like, this is how we conduct business. We listen to the applicant and they walk us through. Some of us have history on this particular amendment because it's been in front of us before. But I don't want to close the door for any of your contributions if you have any at this juncture.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I appreciate that. Obviously, our colleagues on the board here have done such a thorough job. Sounds like this has been before the board in various iterations, and the applicants have responded well to feedback. So no comments. Appreciate the opportunity, but I'm sure some will come to mind as I get deeper into the material. So thank you.
Sure. Well, from my perspective, you know, it is, and I'll go with what Rachel said. A lot of this is going to get ironed out in the site plans, and we're going to start to see some sketches on how this will look. But from a initial perspective, and again, seen it before, I think there's been some good effort here in trying to take that traffic and put it where we want it to go and avoid having multiple congested areas. So I'm pretty comfortable with this. There's a lot of little dots that need to be made, and some more conversation and answers from our peer reviewers that I know you'll go back and forth with staff on. So at this point, oh, Roger, you get one more shot at this.
Yeah, sorry about this, but I thought about something else and I wanted to ask Dan this question. At the workshop that we had back, I think it was in September, where you introduced the new consultants from Massachusetts.
Yeah. Yep.
I think if I recall, you mentioned that even though the projects on Lot 1 have been approved, you may be revisiting those plans. And I was just kind of curious, in an effort to avoid traffic going through the market square, you know, where the green area is going to be and everything, are you giving any additional thoughts to trying to create some sort of a bypass as you're heading north on the Downs Road to Market Street?
Well, in terms of Lot 1, there's Lot 1, and I can't see the screen, the lot number, but 3i Home is also the other lot, key lot. So both projects, Roger, are going to move forward. We're just doing the sequencing a bit differently in terms of our priorities. So I don't, 3i Home is committed to that layout. They have their main housing funding is committed, so it's not something easily unraveled. So I think that site layout's going to largely be the same. We're making some adjustments to Lot 1, which is that mixed-use building, because we're going to shift a driveway to better work with the layout that you're looking at now. That middle driveway and access road that's going to provide access to Market Basket in the lots that we'll discuss next. We want to align that to have a four-way intersection. So we're going to make some subtle adjustments to that lot, but we're not going to, change the plans dramatically.
The reason I asked that is because recently I put in my GPS. I'm over in the Pleasant Hill area, and I put in my GPS. I was kind of curious, the quickest way to get to Costco. And it has going down Route 1 and taking the Downs Road. and zipping right through the Downs Road up to Costco, you know? And I'm just thinking that Market Basket's going to attract an awful lot of people. And so that was only my thought regarding that.
Yeah, I think our Massachusetts consultant would say that's good for the retailers in town center because it'll it'll obviously encourage some folks to drive by. But I think people will obviously learn the fastest routes as the project builds out. So they're going to learn that Hygges Parkway or other routes are going to be faster if they want to experience the cool town center and drive through. Then they certainly can. But I think to get there efficiently, that over time other routes will be taken.
Okay, good. Thanks a lot for the information.
You all set, Roger?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we're gonna call you closed.
Okay.
Folks, I do have a draft motion for this, and it's rather lengthy. And so it might take a minute or two to get through this, but I don't think there's any additions to what we have. I move to approve the Second Amendment to the Downs Town Center subdivision proposed by Crossroad Holdings LLC. This project is depicted in the plan set prepared by Goro Palmer dated 12/30/2024. Findings: the amendment constitutes the third phase of the Town Center subdivision at the Downs. The proposed third amendment includes the expansion of Lot 2 to the north, the creation of lots 10, 11, 12, and 13, and includes the proposed roadway improvements to the remaining Scarborough Downs Road segment that connects to the roundabout previously presented in Phase 2. The board finds the project meets the requirements of the subdivision ordinance, zoning ordinance, and the Downs Town Center Master Plan as amended January 21st, 2025, with the waivers and conditions below. Waivers. The applicant is requesting waivers related to the construction of the Downs Road, which is regulated by Section 701 Town Street Acceptance Ordinance, Section 5D of the ordinance states, design standards herein shall be used for all roads and street designs in the town unless otherwise agreed to or permitted in writing by the planning board. Reclamation section of the Downs Road waiver relative to this construction typical section include minimum center grade. Chapter 701 requires a minimum of 1%, and the applicant proposes to keep the existing centerline slope of the Downs Road from 0.01% to 0.5%. Applicant requests this reduction in part to limit the impact of the roadway design footprint that results when raising the road in most areas to achieve the 1% minimum centerline grade. For surface drainage considerations, the cross slope of the proposed road has been increased to 3%. Aggregate subbase course, applicant requests reduction of the 15-inch subbase course depth to be replaced with the reclaim mix in existing type E gravel beneath the existing Downs Road. New public roadway connecting Downs Road and Market Street. Waivers include driveway separation waiver. Applicant requests a reduction of driveway separation standards from 90 feet to 87 feet to accommodate the proposed driveway and truck apron opening along the bypass road on the north side of Lot 2. Minimum centerline radius, applicant requests the reduction of the minimum centerline roadway radius from 150 feet to 145 feet. Conditions. Address the comments of the staff review memo dated February 18th, 2025. Address the comments of the Haley Ward review memo dated January 7th, 2025. Address comments in the Martin Landis review memo dated February 13, 2025. Number 5, the applicant shall execute and record an updated stormwater maintenance agreement with the town to reference latest approval dates. The form of the stormwater maintenance agreement is located in Appendix 1 of the Town of Scarborough, Chapter 419, Post-Construction Stormwater Infrastructure Management Ordinance. The stormwater maintenance agreement confirms responsibility of the applicant of the requirements under the ordinance for the entire subdivision. Number 6, the revised roadway layout requires an amendment to the approved site plan for Lot 1. Number 7, the stormwater management model and report to be updated to reflect current labels or changes with labels and nomenclature in order to establish a record of the updates. Number 8, quantitative data related to the Willowdale Brook, including but not limited to cross-sectional measurements of the stream throughout the development, upstream and downstream of the project, and each bypass system outfall will be submitted to the town prior to the pre-construction meeting for this phase of the project. Prior to the release of the subdivision plan for recording, the applicant shall A, provide a performance guarantee required by Section 9 of the Town of Scarborough subdivision ordinance. This shall be reviewed by the town engineer. B, coordinate street names and addressing with the E911 addressing officer. This shall be reviewed by the planning department. Number 10, prior to the start of construction, a pre-construction meeting is required. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. The below must be addressed prior to scheduling the pre-construction meeting. A, address staff comments in the 2/18/2025 memo. Address the traffic solution comments in the memo dated 2/13/25. C, address Haley Ward comments in the memo dated 1/7/25. D, provide final full plan set to the planning department. And E, payment of all review fees and invoices. Number 11, prior to the first certificate of occupancy, the applicant will work with Maine DEP to expand the current conservation restriction on Maine DEP Area 3 to include the remaining area of open space D and open space E. Provide recorded easements to the town. B, submit declaration of covenants. C, submit contact information for person responsible for post-construction stormwater inspection and maintenance. And D, all roadway infrastructure improvements shall be completed. This shall be reviewed by the planning department. Whew. All right.
I'll second that, and I applaud you for the heroic job of getting all the way through this.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the second, Rachel, and I think we can take a roll call.
Rick Meinking,
Yes.
James Hebert,
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes.
Bennett Flanders,
Yes.
and Roger Beely.
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Stick up there.
I'll be here.
Well, there's been a request from the applicant that's still swapping, that we look at the proposed lots 2 and 12 sketch plan. And then we will look at the proposed lot 10, which will be the market baskets lot. So with that, you up to speed on that room? We're gonna go to that one.
Certainly.
404 first. 404 will be first.
Mr. Chair, point of order, do we need to vote on that, change the order? I know the town council does that when they change order of things. Maybe we don't, but
I don't know, we didn't talk about that this afternoon, but we're gonna vote on that.
it doesn't matter to me.
I would rule that at this point, we do not need to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Since, unless there's anybody on the planning board who objects, since the applicant agrees, and apparently there's been discussion ahead of time. And it's the same applicant for both. And you can, check me out in Robert's Rules of Order. I've got the book at home if you would like one.
I'm sure you're correct, Rachel. Thank you. Mr. Chair, is your mic on?
It is now. All right, so let me find my 404 is Gora Palmer and PCA on behalf of Crossroad Holdings LLC has requested sketch plan review for retail and mixed-use buildings, satellite parking, lots number 2 and 12 located on Scarborough Downs Road, Assessor's Map R52, Lot 4. Is Autumn taking this one, or are we gonna have Helen do it?
Me a couple more times.
All
Me and
right.
Drew are just keeping the mics. So yeah, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, thank you. This is a sketch plan review for lots 2 and 12 of the Downtown Center. There are a couple components to this, so we'll go one by one, starting with the retail building. This is on lot 2. This is proposed to be a single-story retail building, approximately 48,000 square feet, designed to accommodate 3 to 5 retail tenants. It's adjacent to the proposed Market Basket, Lot 10, which we will get to next, and is located on Scarborough Downs Road and the proposed Loop Road. The next element of this is the mixed-use building on Lot 2. This is proposed to be 5 stories with 4 upper floors with residential units. I believe it's about 76 residential units, and approximately 18,000 square feet of ground floor retail and restaurant space. The ground floor also features a lobby, elevator, stairways, and service areas, including a pedestrian pass-through. This is located on Scarborough Downs Road, across from Lot 8, where the Intermed building is located. The third piece of this is the satellite parking lot. This is on Lot 12, which is located northwest of the rear of Lot 2, and will be accessed from a driveway off the proposed Loop Road across from the proposed Lot 2 retail building that I mentioned. And this will provide auxiliary parking for employees as well as extra parking for residential guests. The applicant's available for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Now the applicant.
I'm actually going to let Dan run this one. I will be here to run the slides. And I'll share my screen. So go ahead, Dan.
Thank you very much, everybody. And again, apologize for not being there in person. I did want to introduce the team. You've already met Erica in the past, and also this evening in terms of the subdivision amendment. Erica's been helping us a lot with overall kind of layout from a traffic and transportation standpoint. Tom Wilder was mentioned earlier this evening. Tom's a team member for the past year plus with Wilder Companies. He brings tons of experience with retail development from a strategy, from a design, from a leasing standpoint. Has done a number of mixed-use projects throughout New England and the East Coast. So Tom's a key informant and kind of architect for this layout and this phase of the project. Eric Brown also think is maybe in the audience. I can't see him right now, but of PCA, Eric's been helping us with other key buildings within the project, especially in Town Center, with the Cross Street condominium project that's underway right now, the 10 Market site and building that's nearly complete. And Eric's team has really been key in terms of helping us with this layout that works for retailers, that works for residents, and creates a special place. So I appreciate Eric's experience and creativity in getting us this far. And then you have Drew, who you know, who brings his own set of skills to the table. So this evening, we did want to, you can go to the next one, Drew. We wanted to talk obviously about Lot 2 and Lot 12, the overall site layout, the key reasons for building orientation, and our approach to placemaking. We're going to talk a bit about the approach to parking from a shared, from a multi-use standpoint, and talk about our focus on pedestrian kind of network and access throughout the center. Eric's gonna chat through the building architecture and the approach there, and then we'll close with kind of timeline and next steps. I would say we asked for this item to go first because it really informs the Market Basket site plan. These sites have been designed in unison, really as one, and this we wanted this one to go first because it leads to the details of the Market Basket layout. So it's going to be probably a blended presentation. I know Eric will talk about, and Tom, the interconnections between the sites, the architectural relationships, etc. So we'll probably cover a fair amount of Market Basket territory with this item, and then wrap up with more specific Market Basket site items that we don't cover in this particular presentation. So So project location, I think the last item on the agenda got you very oriented. This is just the overall that shows the two particular lots in red and blue. So in town center on the west side of Downs Road and north side of Market Street. You can go to the next one, Drew. So Helen actually already did a great job highlighting the key kind of program elements. But lot 2 is this larger blue lot. There's a junior anchor building, about 48,000 square feet. We're continuing to fine tune that. So it may change slightly at a site plan submission, but approximately, 45 to 48,000 square feet. It's a single story building and it's designed and cited to be a neighbor to the Market Basket in particular. And then the other key building within this particular site plan is the mixed use building. It's around an 18,000 square foot first floor plate for retail and restaurant end users. And then as Helen indicated, 4 stories, upper stories are residential, currently 76 dwelling units planned. And then lot 12 in red is the satellite parking area that will be dedicated for employees. So all employees in these 2 buildings would park in that location. And then it also will serve as additional overflow parking for visitors to residents, etc. And this design really is premised on having enough parking, but not too much, and having a very shared and strategic approach around parking, being a very interconnected layout from a driveway and sidewalk standpoint. Would be great from a pedestrian experience and pedestrian realm standpoint, and really to create a special place. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Tom, who's going to get into more granularity in terms of the layout and take it from here. Go ahead, Tom. You're on mute, Tom. Or at least it looks like it.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Dean, and thank you for the opportunity to be in front of this board. I'm always very excited to talk about town centers, and especially this one, which is really, to me, is going to be very, very special. So just, a couple things about what we all view as kind of the important characteristics of a town center. It's got to be vibrant, it's got to be functional, and it's got to have attractive urban spaces. And I think what we've tried to do is accomplish that here. Great mixed-use design obviously incorporates various uses like retail, residential, office, and obviously we have some of those components here. It always is a challenge to make sure you balance the uses, especially in terms of parking and pedestrian flow. And I think, again, we've tried to do that with this plan. Walkability is very, very key, and I'll talk about that in a second. Public spaces. We're not in this first phase here. We're not looking at a lot of public spaces, but even the smaller spaces, and probably Eric will probably get into this a little bit about the spaces between the buildings is very, very important to us, and the spaces at the edges of buildings. So small gathering opportunities, places for outdoor seating, places for folks for social interaction, because a lot of what we do with these kinds of centers, it's not always about the transaction. This is about social interaction. So if we can, create that opportunity for people to enjoy the space, the architecture, the walkability, then we're doing well. And that really talks about the built environment, which again, Eric and PCA does an amazing job. Great architecture, great open space, and opportunities. What we like to call is the 2020 vision. And Eric and I talk about this a lot, about what does that pedestrian feel like when they're walking through the development or down the sidewalk. What does it look like 20 feet above and 20 feet around them? And we end up spending a lot of time working on at that perspective for these kinds of developments. And lastly, functionality is huge. Look, we have some traffic drivers, the Market Basket, the junior anchors. They are traffic drivers. They require a certain level of surface parking. So we've tried to balance that here. And what we've tried to do is, we have these, enough surface parking to accommodate both the retailers and the customers' desires, but we've tried to screen them with the retail buildings, and that what is really what that retail B, that mixed use building is doing. So as you drive, south down on Scarborough Downs Road, the first thing you see is not a parking lot. You're seeing a great enlivened, pedestrian experience, storefronts, outdoor seating, et cetera. So, but, as people would, look, they need to have convenience. It needs to be functional. And what we're trying to promote here, and especially in the town centers that we do, we try to promote that people park once and then walk. And in order to do that, you have to make that as convenient, as easy as possible. And we think we've done that. So the way our buildings are oriented, obviously Market Basket facing Plan South, the junior anchors facing Plan South with their parking requirements. The mixed use building is really oriented to the street, to Scarborough Downs Road. And again, that's to really activate the Scarborough Downs Road on both sides of the street. And you'll see as we kind of get into future phases, that's such an important component to a town center, is to have activation on both sides. In this first phase, we've got, the medical office building across the street providing that activity. And look, we'll spend a lot of time on the back of that building as well, and Eric will probably address that. But we always recognize that these are four-sided buildings, and so there's another level of articulation that even happens on the back, where there may be some retailers that may have rear entrances, but majority of them will be required to have entrances on Scarborough Downs Road. And where we can, we may have retailers that turn the edges and bring glazing around the edge, or restaurants that bring seating within the via, right, where that arrow is. Again, creating opportunities for activation and social interaction. So I think that's kind of the basis for this. Functionality, we feel like it's working well for both the customers and the retailers, and really focusing on the pedestrian experience.
Great, thanks, Tom. I think, Drew, you can jump to the next slide. I think it's focused on parking. Those are our. Tom just.
These are our talking.
Oh, yeah, I just talked right through that. There you go.
I think one key point on this before we jump to the next slide is Market Street. This whole town center retail layout is oriented to expecting Market Street to be really the front door. We do expect Costco and traffic to obviously come down from Innovation and Payne Road. We expect that to be, I wouldn't say back door, it's sort of the side door, if you will. So and I think on this slide, you'll see suggestions of building locations in areas that aren't in front of you for site plan to reinforce kind of Market Street as that urban kind of front door. But with that, Drew, why don't you jump to the next one? So Tom already touched on this. We wanted to dive a little bit deeper because we provided in your package some explanations around our approach to parking. To start, we didn't think adding another consultant to this presentation was wise, but we do have another key consultant that's not with us this evening in Walker Consulting. And Walker is a group that are parking experts, and they do parking needs assessments for all sorts of projects, but they have a heavy focus on mixed use projects, urban projects, downtowns, et cetera, like this. So we've been working with them for a number of months now around threading the needle and finding the right balance in terms of the amount of parking and the location of parking. And they'll work with us through future phases, but they started with this one. And so they really helped us identify these real 4 main locations for different parking activities. So kind of top to bottom, that satellite parking, for lack of a better term, on the lot 12. We see that really as employee parking for the 2 buildings in the site plan, not for Market Basket. They're going to own their own site and have employee parking on their site. But for the retailers in the retail A building and the restaurants and retailers in the mixed use building. They're going to expect that employees park in that location. We also see this parking as you've looked around for parking in town center. You're going to stay a while. You're going to go up and park in the satellite parking. Typical of other town centers and downtowns where it might be a public parking lot. Those are very common where it's not in the heart. It's just next to the heart of the activity center. So that's the expectation for that parking lot, as well as overflow for resident guests to the residents, etc. And then we have, Tom was mentioning in purple here, it's really the primary location for shoppers, customers of the retailers that want to park off street, that want to be in a parking lot. So that's about 170 units and closest to the junior anchor retailers, as well as the mixed use building. And then in addition, we have nested dedicated residential parking. So you'll see the 72 units shown in green, and we're still finalizing, the full count. But those would be reserved and used exclusively for the residents of the mixed use building, with good connectivity, walkways to get to that building. And then, as customary in downtowns and town centers, we have on-street parking. And that's counted as about 56 just in the view here. And then obviously, there's more. But we expect folks, particularly visiting mixed use B, say you're going to dinner or going shopping and going to stay a little while, many will park on street in that location. And for our site plan application, we're going to have, more details from Walker that will get into another level of kind of granularity for the board. But we wanted to provide this overview at sketch plan. I think you can go to the next one. And then this is an overall pedestrian network graphic. And Tom mentioned the criticality of having safe, comfortable experience from a pedestrian standpoint. And in the blue, we've highlighted what we see as the primary and the emphasis on all the different pedestrian routes and paths within Lot 2. So we have a strong sidewalk connection from the satellite parking, the top of the screen, to get employees and also to get visitors to mixed use B, potentially the junior anchor location. Very comprehensive sidewalk and pedestrian network within and around the parking lot for the two buildings, particularly the connection from the residential nested parking over to the residential building or mixed use building. Tom mentioned the via or the pass through. So Eric will show you this in a second. But there's an opening, a passageway from the parking lots to the rear to the majority of the storefronts. And that provides access and convenience for folks not parking on the street. And then we anticipate on both ends of the mixed use building to have outdoor dining and wider walkways. And we did include the Market Basket site, given how closely these sites are coordinated and interconnected. And so just highlighted in red is the core pedestrian network for Market Basket. For those that are walking to Market Basket, whether you say perhaps you're shopping at the junior anchor and then you're walking to Market Basket or vice versa, or you're walking from other locations in town center and not just simply walking from your vehicle with a grocery cart and back. What's not shown is the rest of town center. So this is just the pedestrian amenities and network that relate to these two site plans. As the board knows, we have an extensive network within the subdivision and plan south and east that obviously connects to all the residential, innovation district, etc. So I think the next one, Drew, I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and he can talk about layout and architecture in particular. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Eric Brown. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you tonight. Following Tom and Dan is easy. They talked about all the big picture ideas already, so I won't have to get into that too much. I'll be brief. So this is a view looking north at the three buildings that we've been studying in this application. Market Basket on the left, Retail A in the middle, and Mixed Use Building B on the right. And the buildings are stylistically basically modern. It's 2025. We think that's appropriate. Materials are masonry, fiber cement panels and lap siding, and some metal accents. And as we get in closer, you'll see some of the gathering spaces we're showing around the edges and in between the buildings. See if we can do this. That one. Thank you. So a little closer in, Market Basket on the left. The massing needs to read from far away as well as up close and accommodate pedestrians' needs, to find their way and enjoy their experience when they're up close. So we have a couple colors of brick masonry, some metal accents, and some of the forms of the building denote entrances and gathering spaces. This is Retail Building A from the Market Basket side. Again, so the building is basically a neutral box with elements at the entrances that kind of, help guide pedestrians so they can find their way. In between buildings, we have gathering spaces. This is a view from Downs Road. Again, the buildings on the entrances are denoted, and we're going to be treating that facade along the road as kind of a front of the building with materiality. So the mixed-use building, 4 stories of wood over a steel podium, retail at the ground floor. The way we approach it is we have a brick surround at the ground floor. That's a neutral surround, and then tenants get to express their brand, their identity within the bays of that neutral surround. Majority of the building's lap siding with a few brick accents reaching up. So this is from the roadside. From the parking lot side, Tom was mentioning that the rear of the buildings at the ground floor will be more opaque or not have major entrances, but still we want tenants to have their branding expressed. So they have opportunities to do that. Buildings, again, mostly lap siding with brick that rises up at the residential entrance to kind of help denote that aspect of the building. And then lastly, this is from the south, it shows how we're going to have these spaces for restaurants to spill out on the ground floor on the north and south ends to just create small gathering spaces for the users. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. And just to wrap up around our kind of timeline and where we've been and where we're headed. It was actually mentioned earlier this evening. We started this with a planning board workshop, kind of getting in some overview of town center, not only this phase, but also the future phases, the green and activation. But this is really our 4th or 5th site plan. But we're the first one that's really getting into a retail focus with the mixed use. We had an approval and appreciate the board's approval for the 90% impervious cover in that more limited area. That's really going to enable the design of the mixed use building and future mixed use buildings to come and the associated kind of layout and outdoor dining. We had the town center amendment just a few minutes ago, and this is our sketch plan, and we tried to provide a fair amount of detail for a sketch plan to get into some of these kind of key elements that we've talked about this evening, get some board feedback on them so that we're best prepared for a site plan that we would submit in March for additional review in May, all with the goal of getting this part of the project underway, late spring this year, as Market Basket's really eager to get started, and we're very excited to get started on these 2 buildings and get underway for what we're shooting for is really a fall 2026 opening for at least 2 of these buildings. We expect the mixed-use building will take an additional 4 to 6 months beyond that. But really excited to get underway this summer to meet those goals. So I think with that, I'll close. We have Drew's obviously there this evening and can answer questions around layout and utilities and infrastructure. We've studied that as well, but we thought highlighting and focusing on the elements we covered this evening with the board at sketch plan was the better use of time, but we can answer questions as well about water, sewer, electrical connections and the like, stormwater. So thank you, and I'll turn it back to the board.
Thanks, team, Drew and Dan and company. This item is available for public comment. Do we have anybody out in the public? We're down to people that just want to hang around with us. Well, nobody's online, so I guess we'll close public comment and reminding my colleagues that we'll see this at least one more time, if not more. But it's the intent is to give any further direction that we might have to the development team. And I'll start off by saying I think the buildings look pretty good. I like the 2025 construction. My one thing I want to say is how much renewable energy has the Downs been able to generate at this point in time?
Looking at Dan here.
Dan, you want to take that one?
I don't have it in kilowatts, but in terms of the
What is
recent
your
projects,
generating
Rick,
capacity on all the flat roofs that we're seeing at the Downs? What's the current generating capacity?
I don't have that. We can get back to you, Rick, on that. In terms of
My point is there's not a whole lot of solar going on in the Downs. And, again, we're having these nice opportunities with flat roofs and, I get jazzed up when I see pictures coming before us with solar panels on it, but when the proof in the pudding is there isn't any solar. And that's troublesome. And you talk about the cost of moving wires and things, putting them underground and things like that. You have golden opportunities here to do some generating, and with the storage capacities that are now available on the market and off the shelf, there's a real advantage to taking some of these flat areas and doing something with them. And I know I've said that numerous times before, but I could not let this one slip by again, saying we got a bunch of flat roofs coming in, and I don't see a lot of initiative from the Downs folks to jump on the Scarborough side of things and say we're really committed to more sustainable and resiliency in our buildings, in our built environment. And I'd like to see some of this brought into this area. This is a very visible area. And I just, again, we're missing opportunities that we should be jumping on, because these are proven ways in which we can do no harm. And that's kind of what sustainability really means, is not doing any harm. I'm not going to go any further on that, but I wanted to get that out in front, that maybe it'd be nice to have some sort of renewable energy program within this new downtown area and some of these larger retailers that have the ability to aggregate and do tax credits and those things that would make generating electricity more feasible. So
yeah, just so the board is aware, the last 7 multifamily apartment buildings have solar on them. So the 7 flat roof apartments that we've done, I'll have solar. So we can follow up in more detail at the next board
Okay.
meeting. But we have done that on those roofs that can
I just
accommodate.
worry about the loads that, Market Basket's got a heck of a refrigeration load. Grocery stores and healthcare are two of the largest energy consuming sectors. And we're gonna have lots of that in this area. So I appreciate just taking that for whatever it's worth to your team and seeing if we can make some inroads to continue what Scarborough wants to see in our built environment. Anybody have any direction or any thoughts or comments they want to make? James?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll mimic your comments. I think as long as I've been on the board, you've been speaking about solar in the down, so I really appreciate it, and I'll mimic those comments. One quick question. Do we have in the 75 to 100 parking spaces, that's in lot 12, what's the walking distance, or excuse me, what's the walking time from there to town center, the green space? Do we have that?
I
don't
think
have
it's
the-
around. Well, Drew, do you have that? I think I was going to say
I don't.
300 to 400 feet. I mean, we can get that, but it's not more than 500 feet, I would say, Jim, to the green, if that's the question. On lot 3.
Yeah, where
Yeah.
Market meets Scarborough Downs Road.
It's essentially a
space.
block, kind of that driveway at the bottom of the mixed use building.
Yeah, more like 2 blocks, but
is-
yeah.
Sorry?
It's more like 2 blocks, but I get what you're saying.
We can show it so I think that building, that L-shaped building that's that's at the corner of Market and Downs Road, I believe that's probably the vertical end of that building is around 300 feet long. So, from that location, that would be 300 feet to get to the crosswalk at Market and Downs, which would put you on the green.
Like 5 minutes, 8 minutes.
I would think even
No.
less than that, Jim.
Yeah, less than that.
Your typical 3 to 5 feet per second walking pace. I think you're closer to 2 to 3 minutes.
Awesome.
At satellite parking.
The only reason I asked is it is kind of out there all by itself. But I mean, scale of drawings and actually walking it is sometimes 2 very different things. So thank you for clarifying that for me. Regarding of walking and access in the Market Basket parking lot, and I love the fact that you're able to include, we can maybe go back to the screen where it shows the overlapping walking loop. That's part of Market Basket. I think I had mentioned this at the last time we had spoken about this. Really nice to see the advantage being taken of taking advantage, excuse me, of just providing more walkability around this entire site. One comment that I would have in the upper left-hand corner where it sort of elbows out, right where the last overhead utility pole is going to be. I would like to maybe see some sort of connector from the parking spots to that sidewalk. So folks scenario is someone's parking in that parking lot and they just want to get straight to that sidewalk and then walk a loop somewhere or wherever they're going to go. They would have to go up and over the grass in order to get there. So similar to what you have in the mixed use building where you have that sidewalk that's sort of juts straight across the middle. Maybe that would continue horizontally all the way across the Market Basket parking lot, not asking you to put in like a permanent treed sidewalk here, but maybe just marks on the asphalt. That goes to my next comment. And I think you're doing a really great job with this in the mixed use space, but in the Market Basket parking lot, and I don't know if that's better for the next one.
Probably better for the next one.
Yeah, okay. Let's just make sure we mark more pathways of pedestrian access. I guess I'll save that until we get to the next one then. For the 72 spaces that are resident only, how would access to that be policed so that it's only residents there? Would it be like a parking pass, a tag in a window, someone walks around and checks?
Yeah, our property management group would manage that. There would be a combination of signage and policing. and also the design of it's quite deliberate to have the larger landscaped surroundings and to be disconnected from the rest of the parking lot to the east and the north.
Yep.
So it's a combination of sort of layout, as it appears to be separate from the rest and property management oversight.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Again, taking the human perspective, as Rachel was mentioning earlier, people are going to drive fast and take chances along the quickest way possible. If people see a spot there, they're going to try to nab it. So if there's a way for them to police that, I'm sure they'll take care of it. The last comments I have is on the mixed-use building itself. It may be more a question for the architect. In the renderings, it showed this really cool rooftop area on plan view south of the building. Is this intended to be residential, or is this going to be commercial? Like, what's the intended use of sort of the rooftop deck area?
Yeah, that rooftop deck would be for the residents,
Residents,
but
okay.
it does, activate the space, just visually.
Yeah. I guess my personal preference, if I were king for a day, it's a great opportunity for a rooftop deck bar restaurant. If you wanted to insert some commercial space into that. Again, thinking about special features in the Downs in general, like we're going to have the green space, the artificial turf that's going to be there, but any chance to have sort of a nice view over the space, especially when the sun sets in the west on that side, like I mentioned earlier. The sunset's going to be really huge on that side. For residents, great. That's awesome for them. But I guess maybe consider the opportunity for something cooler to go there. I'll say cooler to go there.
Yeah, I mean, it is a cool idea. The thing is with mixed-use buildings, separating, public from private access.
Elevators and ADA and all that.
Elevators, stairs, there's a security thing for the residents and we
Sure.
need to maintain that. So it could be done physically, but it would take up a lot of space and be challenging.
I guess maybe give it a little bit more thought, if you would, please. And then lastly, you said the front of each of those businesses is going to be on the Scarborough Downs Road side.
Yeah,
Is that going to be their primary entrances as well?
that's right. This is the Downs Road side. This is
Yeah.
the primary entrance.
Will there be any access to each of these establishments from the parking lot side?
Yeah, there is opportunity to do that. So this is the parking lot side.
Yeah.
So there'll need to be a means of egress likely anyway. And it'll be up to the tenant if they want to have an entrance on that side.
Okay.
But so there are opportunities for branding and graphics along there.
10-4. I guess my thought is if someone's going to come here for a specific venue, bar, restaurant, something cool, they're going to park and they're going to want to walk as little as possible to get there. So I guess there is a way to maybe encourage tenants to have backdoor access from that parking lot. It would save them from having to walk all the way around the building, especially if they're a farther region of that parking lot.
Yeah, and actually also there is that via, what Tom uses the Italian term. There's a walkway through the center of the building, so it does shorten the walk.
Cool. All right. Just some things to consider at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Rachel?
Yes, I'm going to disagree with James. Actually, I like I like the deck, and it seems to me it's a good place to attach that deck to a community room so that the residents could have a birthday party for the kids, some sort of events, invite a bunch of family over. In other words, an area where people can gather. And could be available to the residents, and then also just to sit out there and watch the people go by in the town center. So I would see nothing against having a little wet bar in the back of it, but I'm not sure the complete restaurant up there would work with all of the apartments that are there. I've got a couple of things that I'm looking at. So the back of that building would be where it used as loading zones.
Yeah, so depending on obviously the tenant there, that back drive aisle and parking lot is really the kind of, I'll call it box truck delivery for anything there. We're not anticipating like a much larger truck than that for that specific building and use.
Yeah, I think you need to find a way to stripe that somehow or other and to put a loading zone sign there. Because, people get their material, they get their stock. And you're not going to see that. But the other thing that you're going to see is, because you have apartments there, you're going to see a moving van. And moving vans can be larger. And it's going to, especially as soon as that building opens, you're going to see a lot of moving vans coming in there. So you're going to need to figure out how to handle some of the slightly larger trucks rather than the straight box trucks as those vans come in, with good instructions as to where the drivers go and how they operate back there. I did want to take note of the proposal for some street art on the buildings. The view of the racetrack that you have there, the horse and I've forgotten what it's called. It's not a carriage, but
Sulky?
a sulky, that's it, yeah.
Sulky.
So that was nice. And then the art along the bottom, along the blank space of the wall. I'm very much in favor of not really having blank walls in commercial areas, but instead use them for good artwork. Now, I don't know whether the sulky and the horse were painted or made of different parts of the side of the lap side. I don't know. Different colors. Well, I said I don't know, so I don't need to know today, but I do need to know how you're going to present that and be a little firmer in how you're going to use street art there. So, the sketch plan idea is we don't necessarily need the answers today, but we do want to see things. We do want to see them when you come back to us with more details. What's the height of the building, the mixed-use building?
About 65 feet or so, somewhere in that.
Okay, so we will see that when the plan comes to us again. We'll see that in more details. Now, let's see what else I have. I have a lot more little comments here. Another question that I have, and it really goes to the town as well. We're now seeing a lot of use of on-street parking. And at some point, I certainly think we need to keep track of how many times we have promised, or you have promised, to use the same parking space with different buildings. Each time that you all come to us, we get, and this number of on-street parking spaces. Well, I can go through the whole thing and count the number of parking spaces that we have on street, but I would basically like to know, especially as we get downtown, how many times you're going to use them per day. Is there going to be an hourly? Is the town going to put up a 2-hour parking on street? How are you going to handle ADA parking on street? What are you going to do and how are you going to handle snowstorms to get any cars off the on-street? Because this is going to be a town, it's going to be a town street. So the town has some ability to say 2-hour parking and no overnight parking. So I think you need to think about that and exactly think about how and why you're counting and constantly counting on-street spaces and counting them again and again and again, the same ones. So let's really take a good scorecard look at on-street parking now, because now it becomes very important as it gets more and more built up right in this area. We can't keep saying, plus another 10 on-street parking spots. I would suggest that in terms of the parking area, parking lot, I hope you're considering naming those, what you're calling driveways and I'm calling private ways.
We did initially discuss with the fire department and the GIS coordinator on this, and I think at least one of those drives will be named. And we're working with them on exactly which ones those will be, so.
1, 2, 3. 3 of them probably should be named. Because for several reasons, and there should be some really good signage within the parking lots. Because if somebody goes to a restaurant, it's at night, they get out, they get to the parking space, and their car won't start, and they call AAA, they need to be able to say, we are in lot X off of street Y. In other words, it's directional. It's directional for ambulances. It's good, we need good signage there. There's a lot of spaces. And I think the more it's treated as a public space that's walkable, where people can sit on some of these, on benches that you set up along these parking lots, along the sidewalks. And these places are named, the more people feel as though they are in a very finished sort of environment, rather than an open parking lot with some islands. So I urge you to consider how you're going to handle those, how you're going to handle the lighting along those private ways and within the parking lots. And again, how you're going to try to ensure that the people in the apartments actually have spaces when they get out there. So it's not going to be easy because people are going to drive in and say, whoops, there's a space, and in they go. So I think there's been a lot of good thought. I really do like the idea of, I like the architecture. I like the idea of the pass-through. I like the flow of the pedestrian amenities there, that they can walk through to the downs. But I really don't like the idea of just, here's a parking lot, and we do have a lot of trees there, but instead to make it much more feel like blocks. It's probably all I have this time. I'm sure I'll think of something else later. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Roger, I see your hands up. You get one crack at it.
He's one crack. Rachel took all my thunder.
Roger, you'll find something.
Let me see here. Actually, I think the whole layout, this is a sketch plan. And I think once we resolve the whole loop road and the queuing and the turn lanes and everything else like that, I think this is a very attractive layout here. I was particularly impressed with the multi-story building. And I wanted to ask, is that what the building's going to actually look like, or is that just a theoretical rendering of what it will look like?
Well, this is sketch plan.
Roger, please don't ask questions like that. Then they have to answer them, and then when they come back with something different, then we start to go after them and say, well, that's not what it looked like to begin with.
Well, I think it's such an impressive looking building, especially on the Downs Road. And I like the other side with the sulky and everything on the wall. I just think it's such an impressive building, and I just hope that that's what the final product will look like. To follow up on something that Rachel did mention, she talked about trucks coming in for loading and everything, and it got me thinking about how you expect like UPS or FedEx trucks, the big box trucks. Where are they gonna? Because you're gonna have residential, 4 floors of residential in this multi-story building. Where are those trucks gonna come in? Are they gonna be expected to be going to those units from the street or from the parking area?
I'm sure Dan will jump into, but I know there is a mail and package room inside the building. So there is a dedicated location for residents to pick up their packages. As far as the actual delivery vehicles, I know Rachel had very similar comment on where they're going to be, I guess, the loading area. We'll take a good hard look at that. Again, initially, given the use of the bottom floor retailers, the idea was the drive aisle, which again, we'll take a look at for the loading areas when we come back for site plan.
Oh, okay. And then I noticed over there, in the overflow lot, the satellite lot, I read that that's a potential structured, parking, which is a garage, maybe down the road. And I'm just wondering, I go back to, something else Rachel mentioned about the parking. I've been concerned about, I mean, I can see a lot of people having an interest in coming to this area who don't live there. And I'm just concerned that there's going to be a lack of parking. And that's why I've talked about a garage at some point, and especially closer to Market Square, where, I mean, if you're going to have a garage up there, and that potentially a garage up there in lot 12, I mean, you couldn't get further from Market Square, I don't think.
Yeah, Roger, I appreciate the comment, and we've been thinking about locations long-term where going vertical with structured parking can work. And so what we've tried to do is identify a few different locations. That satellite parking area may make some sense. So we're basically the footprint of it. We want to make sure works for a parking structure, not because we're proposing a parking structure,
Right.
next year or the year after, but the
Yeah.
footprint can accommodate a structure. We also think there's a location east of the green that could work down the road,
Oh, okay.
for a parking structure. So
That's good to hear.
we're
That's good to
being
hear.
thoughtful around like not doing a design that enables future adaptation, but also not trying to figure out the economics of trying to do one early, because we know the answer to that. It doesn't
Sure.
work.
Okay.
So, yep.
Well, that's encouraging. I mean, I think I wouldn't be surprised if down the road you do have to go to that, because, which to me, if you do have to go to that, that's actually a good sign, because that means there's a lot of activity and a lot of people coming to the area, which I think is what that will make the whole downtown, the shops and restaurants and everything much more vibrant, if you have more people down there. But they'll be turned away if they can't find parking. So that's a concern I've had from the very beginning. But otherwise, I think it looks really, really nice. I like to pass through on that multi-purpose building. It's just, I'm looking forward to the development of this, and I don't think I have anything else to add right now. I think a lot has already been mentioned, so I'll just leave it at that. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Yes, Tate.
Jump in with one quick thing here. I would just like to have further information on control of the pedestrian traffic to that satellite lot. It does seem like a decent ways if you come out on kind of the west side of Market Basket, or you're by that nice green space between the buildings. The pedestrian walkway kind of goes around to the east. And I would say, human nature is the path of least resistance. Understanding this is kind of a sketch, but would love kind of more information onto what the plan is for controlling that kind of pedestrian traffic to the satellite lot.
We can definitely get into more detail at site plan. One thing that's not shown accurately here that we've talked to staff about changing, that kind of ties to that, is that, as you can see in this graphic, there's a crosswalk right above where it says lot 2. And the walkway is behind like the loading area of the junior anchors. it's shown in blue on the other side because we work with staff on actually eliminating that crosswalk. And having pedestrians stay on the north side of the road and then have a crosswalk that's more customary at the intersection, which will be much safer for pedestrians. And I think also will certainly discourage pedestrians from ending up in places they shouldn't be, behind in the loading area, behind Market Basket or the junior retailer. So, but we can definitely diagram that further and review that further with the board at the next meeting.
Sure, yeah, that would be great. I think that would be a nice kind of organic solution. So looking forward to see what comes out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did I hear somebody mention earlier that there was gonna be some kind of walkway between Market Basket and junior retailers along that red dotted line?
No, that's a lot line.
Yep.
What is going to be between the two buildings is a outdoor kind of dining sitting area. So right along the front facades of those two buildings, down exactly that'll, in one of the images that Eric was showed that space. But the green area won't be, that's north of that, won't be accessible for pedestrians. We actually can't add much more impervious area in there. It's really going to be for on the back half of that area, service items like a generator, transformer that will be screened. So we really don't want to encourage pedestrians to kind of go through there and end up by the loading area. So we're gonna screen it and make sure they don't.
Okay, yeah, good. That's what I was hoping the answer would be. Maybe I
Yeah.
misheard. Well, that fenced as well, I assume, once you get past wherever the area is that the seating area is, so that people don't, I mean, you can go back there if you have to, if you're a maintenance person, but
Right.
generally preventing the average pedestrian. Okay. I noticed you had, I know it's a sketch plan, but you had put down EV charging down kind of between the two lots, the mixed use shared lot and the residential lot. I didn't see anything about that on the satellite parking lot, but I assume that's something that you'll be considering. Or if it's not, I would assume, or I would recommend that you do strongly consider that. I think we need to really think about, this is gonna be a lot of the parking for the downtown area. And even though, our ordinances right now don't require as many EV spaces as maybe we would want to require in 50 years, think about, this is the best, when you're building the site is the best time to make all the infrastructure for that. And the more we can do for that, thinking long-term, the easier it'll be when we don't have to tear up a whole parking lot to add more EV chargers in the future. Not that we want people necessarily staying at these spots 24/7 in certain spots, but that's a concern. Another concern that another thought that I had would be, how can we encourage more multi-use or whatever the multimodal transportation? So we have lots of parking spaces and we need lots of parking spaces, but we also really want to encourage people to take buses downtown, bikes, walking. Can that take the form of either parking permits, parking fees, limited parking times in some of these lots? I mean, you don't want necessarily people to park it up, taking the whole lot up, for the whole weekend, and then there's no spots. But I don't know. It'd be nice to have some kind of more concrete plans for how we can encourage other modes of transportation. I know that there's going to be some discussion of additional bus lines or further bus lines from what we currently have to get more towards downtown, but that's really important. I did have a comment about that horse mural. I kind of liked that, but it's not I'm sure that the final plan, the final mural will be a little bit different, but it's a great idea. I really like the artwork on the buildings. So I'd echo the comments about that. And I like the pass through and the idea of the pass through in the multi-use building. That's really cool. Overall, I think it's a good plan. I just think that, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of it. Do I have anything else hanging on my computer? Fell asleep. Sorry.
Yeah, and Ben, just to
Go
kind
ahead.
of let you catch that. In terms of the bicycle, pedestrian and transit, obviously we're setting up the downtown. This is more of a subdivision item, but we're setting up the downtown to have the ability to add bus stops. We're allocating those spaces of where we're thinking about where would the bus actually be for that for future, right? Because we can't control when the bus would come down or the service line, but we want to make sure we're ready for it if it does, right? So we're always thinking about that. The other key piece is we're trying to obviously balance vehicle parking spaces, which we've heard a concern of tonight, and also not taking away vehicle parking spaces for other multimodal. I think they can work coherently together, such as bicycle racks placed, strategically for that exact purpose, where it'll encourage someone to actually use their bicycle more if you can park closer to the building, stuff like that, right? So we're kind of thinking of those things, and we'll detail that further in the site plan. Those are just a couple of things that came to mind.
Great.
I could chime in too, just real quick, since I'm here tonight. Just a couple of things. It's kind of funny because, and I totally understand it, but we're hearing some folks concerned about not having enough parking. And then we're hearing that there's a concern about being more multimodal and a little more forward in that way. And I think we can have a little bit of both. And I think that's what the balance is here. I really liked what Tom said earlier about encouraging people to park once and then enjoy the space. So I think that the parking is really available for people to, come to the town center and spend a lot of time. I think that's the idea here, is that they park once and they can do a lot of different things, take in the scene, enjoy the cafe area, do the walkthrough thing, kind of take in all the people. But I think the way that it's laid out, the way that it's meant to be kind of pedestrian scale, really safe streets, is all encouraging people to keep out and walking. The other piece to this, I think, is a land use thing. The nature of a mixed use development is that you have people already there. So certainly the residents that are there are wanting to live there so that they can live without a vehicle on a regular basis, and go to the restaurant, go to their gym, go to their grocery store, and not necessarily have to use their vehicle. So I think having people already living on site, but by the nature of that, you're going to encourage that as well.
Great, thanks. I guess one more thing was about that I had thought about the satellite parking area. How are you going to enforce or strongly encourage the employees to park there as opposed to closer to the buildings and or visitors for the residents? Is there like a parking pass for it for the visitors, that's where they can park overnight? Is there maybe each resident gets a one visitor pass for that lot, but how do you encourage that use for that lot and not have those people, like the employees and the visitors, parking in the shared mixed lot, forcing people who maybe are maybe need closer parking spots that have to then end up in the satellite spot because the visitors and the employees have taken up the good spots? How do you enforce that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, Walker Consultants is gonna help us with that, because they do these like parking management plans in addition to needs analysis. So for site plan, we'll get you more information, on that, but there's gonna be a management plan around parking, which is gonna provide a lot of different tools, but the intent is that there's dedicated parking for employees. Employees are expected to park in that location, and the retailers are gonna want them to, because the retailers want their customers to have, the parking that's more adjacent to the building as the first available parking. But we'll get you more details from Walker, because they're experts at this and can help us manage the parking for the long term.
Great. Thanks. I think that's all that I have for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. From your perspective, have you feel like you have some feedback based on your sketch, and we'll come forth with a site plan? Anything we need to answer for you? I can think right off that maybe gated parking area for the tenants that live in that apartment, where you just have a key card and you go through. I mean, that's becoming more and more popular. I can also see where that might be something for the employees to be able to access their parking. I also know, Dan, that you had talked about some sort of EV fueling station. And would this satellite parking spot up there be a good candidate for that concept?
Yeah, we can consider it, Rick, certainly. We've talked about a few different locations. You know, there's another location off the screen here closer to Market Street that we thought would work well from a centralization standpoint, but we can look at that. Part of the reason the ones that EVs are proposed where you see it on the screen is the shared nature of the charger. You know, in the evenings, there can be residents using the chargers, and then during the day, because it's straddles the resident and the shopper parking, shoppers can use them during the day, but we'll study that further. To your
All right.
point.
Anything else, board? All right, we'll see you again on the site plan for this lot.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm gonna ask the members, do you need a break? We usually do, or it's been customary. I hadn't forgotten. So you want to just take a quick 5 and then we'll get through the last item and finish it. I couldn't find a good time to interrupt, so we'll adjourn for 5. And we got the red light. So now we're gonna move on to 4.03, which is the market basket sketch plan, and I've been looking for my agenda really quick here so I can. Here it is. 4.03, MR Holding LLC, Gora Palmer and PCA on behalf of DSM Realty is requesting a sketch plan review for a proposed market basket on Lot 10 located in Scarborough Downs Road, Assessors Map R52, Lot 4. All right, Helen, I assume you're going to jump on this one too.
I'm gonna do this one too. Thank you. Yes, so this is on lot 10 of the Downs Town Center, the proposed market basket location about 80,000 square feet. The parcel area is about 7.7 acres, give or take, and is located in the town center in the Crossroads Plan Development Zone, and it is currently undeveloped. The site has frontage along the proposed future public way, which is the loop road we've been talking about, along the northern and western boundaries, and it would be bordered by the proposed Crossroads retail building that we've been looking at. So it's subject to the CPD zone as well as the Downs Town Center Master Plan, which was approved on the 21st, on January 21st, as well as the site plan review ordinance. And I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Helen. And for the applicant, you're batting 1,000 here.
I am, and I'm gonna pass it along. I'm gonna bunt to Dan, who's online.
Yeah, Drew, if you don't mind sharing the
Yeah.
presentation. And I'll introduce it to the board, largely the same team. So Eric's gonna comment on the architecture at the extent that he needs to towards the end of the presentation. I do want to mention Jim Lamp is there in attendance and can answer more specific questions on Market Basket and their operations if the board has any at this early stage. At sketch plan, Jim's works with Market Basket and for Market Basket on all of their stores in the Northeast. So you've already looked at lot 10 and you know where the site is, so we can quickly go past this this one. And we've got a sneak preview of the layout and how interconnected it is with lot 2. But this is the boundaries of the lot. As Helen mentioned, it's about 7.6 to 7.7 acres in size. The grocery itself, the building's 80,000 square feet. In terms of access points, I think you've looked at this already as part of subdivision and lot 2, but there's some key access points, especially coming from Market Street. So the loop road will be a main access point to get to the parking on the south and also on the west side of the store. We have a shared drive along the southerly edge of the lot that will provide access to the parking that's in front of the building. It also will provide access, obviously, to the mixed-use building and the retail building we just talked about, as well as future buildings that are on lot 2 that are not yet entirely programmed, which are in the blank spaces on the bottom of the screen between Market Street and the lot. There's another key access point to the west that provides access to the front drive aisle for the store, parking in both parking fields. And then into the rear of the building is more employee parking and loading. And Drew's laid this out in a manner to work for the truck deliveries and turning without getting into the loop road. So truck access and circulation is provided entirely on site. And he can speak in more detail on that if you have questions about that. We've already kind of understood pedestrian connectivity, but we've tried to do a lot working with Market Basket on providing great connectivity to the site for those that might walk to the grocery, as well as within the site for those driving to the grocery and doing their shopping. There's 410 parking spaces provided on the site. That's think they're often anywhere from 410 to upwards of 460 parking spaces that are necessary for their 80,000 square foot buildings. They've reduced what they typically do in more of a shopping center or plaza, given the mixed use nature of the project. So 410's on the lower end of what works for them. But they're comfortable with it given the robust pedestrian layout and all the things that we talked about in the last presentation around mixed use projects. And I think sort of lastly around where we are in terms of staff review, in addition to staff comments and working with planning staff that's present this evening, we've also had a meeting with the fire department and public safety around their access and emergency response. They're largely comfortable with the layout, didn't have a lot of concerns, but we will be talking with them, as mentioned in the last item, around street naming and addressing. And I'm sure they'll do another round of review from a fire response standpoint prior to site plan submission. So Drew, if you go to the next one. And this slide shows you the same layout that we've already talked about extensively, just highlighting the lot lines so that you see where Market Basket's ownership will be. So this is separate, obviously, than from lot 2. That's why it's a separate agenda item. This is a lot that will be owned and maintained by Market Basket, which is different from lot 2 that will have retail tenants within those 2 buildings. So from a kind of operations and management standpoint, Market Basket will maintain this site. There'll be a variety of shared responsibilities that, given the nature of the layout in terms of clearing snow on walkways that are surrounding them and access to drive aisles and maintenance, etc. But the core of their site will be owned and maintained by Market Basket with those easements and shared responsibilities that we're working with them on. And otherwise, I think we touched on the majority of the overall amenities that this building will plug into. As briefly discussed, there is going to be an outdoor dining placemaking area that's outlined in that orange oval there between Market Basket and the junior retailer. That's a space that is on the Market Basket site, will be used largely by Market Basket customers who want to take a respite there or grab some food from their cafe and dine out there. It's not far from their cafe that they provide in their building. And then there's a lot of attention to detail by Market Basket around landscaping. And we're starting to work through the details of that for our site plan submission, but there's going to be tree wells and plantings, street trees along the front of Market Basket. Very robust landscaping around the entire site, including within their parking area. They pay a special attention to their landscaping and the aesthetic of their projects. Just recently completed one in Topsom, which is a great looking site that they own, which is different than their Rock Row location. And they intend to have that level of landscape provided on this particular site. I think I might hand it to Eric, Drew, if that's the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, we can really let the work, speak for itself, the design. We've been doing Market Baskets for almost 20 years. We've delivered 40 stores, and this client insists on great quality materials. They're very much attention to detail, numerous seating areas outside. Just a contemporary building with nice, rich materials. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. And I think with that, I'll wrap up and turn it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. This item is open for public comment. Anybody wishing to make a comment? No, nothing. No one online. Okay, we'll close public comment and I'll open it up in no particular order here with Rachel raising her hand first, if she's got the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. I've got a couple of questions about, actually only one question about the architecture, and that's on the schemata that you showed. It appeared as though the building, the brick was sort of yellow or orange.
It just kind of looks that way in the rendering. It's actually a red brick.
Is it going to match the other buildings? That's the
Not
real question.
necessarily, no.
Why not?
Because it's a collection of buildings that have their own unique character and there'll be a relationship, but they won't necessarily match because we don't want them to look like it's one place that, is all matched up. So they won't clash, they'll complement each other.
You're going to have to really show me how they complement.
Okay.
Because the orange all of a sudden just sits out there. And if it's not really orange, I need to see what it really is. So you can certainly bring in examples.
This is not a repeat, but this is similar to a project we did in Warwick, Rhode Island. We'd be happy to bring in a photograph of that building.
Okay. I'm from Rhode Island, so I get my daughter to go down and take a picture too.
Yeah.
But you can bring in the photo of that. Just understand that all of a sudden that was kind of jarring. Is when you take a look at what the rest of the whole site looks like. And the rest of the whole site isn't cookie cutter. It has a variation, but that color looked a lot more like a regular shopping center from the 70s or so. So I understand you have specific architecture and signage. That's understood. I mean, that's the brand, but there are places where you can change the colors to harmonize much more with what's going to be the whole built environment there.
Yeah, I think the problem here is it's difficult to render the brick, the color that it actually is going to be in real life. That's why I think a photograph would help.
Okay, need that. Then you might as well just stand there. Go ahead. So, or somebody's going to be standing there. The question, I look at the median and the landscaping. There's a median strip heading towards the building, and it points really towards the building. Can somebody point it out? Now, what we typically want to see is a pedestrian walkway in the ordinances when, and Autumn, you're going to have to correct me on this or fill in. How far away does a pedestrian walkway start? Must it start to head towards the main building?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but we'll look at it when it comes in for site.
Yeah, so I would suggest that it is pedestrian safety. So I would suggest that you take a look at that in a way of broadening it and making that also the pedestrian walkway, so that people can approach the building through there rather than through the aisles of the parking lot. Go ahead.
Evening. My name's Jim Lamp. I'm a professional engineer with LT Development. I've been working with Eric for about 20 years with Market Basket, done about 40 stores and maybe 20 or 30 rehabs of stores. There are instances where it makes sense to put a walkway down this center island. That island, I believe, is 20 feet wide, but it's kind of a push and pull as to whether it will actually be used. And in this case, we felt that it would make sense to bring the walkway down the middle to get you to the handicap spaces, but then not carry it all the way through the parking lot because there's really truly no destination for people. They're going to be going down that walkway and they're going to want to feed the cars that might be an aisle or two over. So what we typically do is about 13 or 14 spaces in, we do a cut through. So we stripe off 2 spaces, and you can get, if you're getting the wrong aisle, you can cross through it, so you don't have to try to get a cart over the top of curbs or anything like that. But in this case, we just felt that it was more important to have landscaping that was 20 feet wide, that would sustain and help trees grow to a fuller growth than it would be to break it up with a 5-foot sidewalk in the middle, and only have 7 feet of planting on either side.
Okay, and I understand, I understand that. I believe we have an ordinance. So Autumn will take a look at it, and let me say that this whole concept was the last thing that Costco caved in on. Yeah. So just to understand that. I think it's important in terms of pedestrian safety. Bring us something we can deal with, bring us something that matches the ordinance.
Another thing that, well, we can work with the staff on that. The other thing I should point out is that typically the parking bays are 60 feet wide. We go with 63. So that it allows for more space. Everybody's going to be using the drive aisle as they do at supermarkets for their carts. So every drive aisle is actually 3 feet wider than what's typically done.
So you've got the space to put in the walkway. But you raised the other question, and that is the question of cart returns. And I don't see where the cart returns are here, and are they going to take away from the amount of parking?
They're included. They're not shown on the rendering, but on this plan, you can kind of see the CC label in the middle of those parking bays. Those are intended the cart corrals. And the Market Basket has a standard that we adhere to. They are included with the 410 space, so that excludes the cart corrals.
Okay, they are not on. They are not on what we have here. So when you come back to us, let's see, be really clear where they are. Okay? That's all I got.
Thanks, Rachel. Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What are the sort of intended operating hours or expected operating hours of Market Basket? Is that known?
7 to 9.
7 to 9?
7 to 7.
Okay. Is there possibility of looking at dimming the lights, after hours? And you probably still need some lights in the parking lot, but anyway, we can reduce. Yeah.
Security lighting will be on till.
Oh,
Just for the purposes of our.
Yeah, sorry.
I've got voice like the chairman. We have security lighting, like typically they go, we stock during the day. So our employees are stocking all day long. And about an hour after closing, typically it goes to security lighting, which might be every third or fourth light. And then they'll go off when dawn happens, so.
Great. I also had the thought, separate item of, as you mentioned, a way to travel between the left and right parking lots there that are planned south of the Market Basket, because someone getting in the wrong lane, you don't want to be jumping over a curb with a cart or anything. But yeah, we'll have to figure out what works with the ordinance, as Rachel was saying. Overall, I don't have a lot of other comments at this time. Looking forward to seeing, where this goes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Ben. Tyler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One maybe sort of operational question. I know a lot of supermarkets are going towards curbside pickups and have designated spots for that. I don't know if Market Basket does curbside or intends to do that, and whether those spots are or should be designated as kind of blocked off from regular parking spots.
At this time, Market Basket really doesn't do that. They do have, they don't have any service that's built into the store, but I forget the name because we used it during COVID. But you have a service and they will come pick it up and deliver to your house.
So like Instacart.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
But we don't have any service like that planned for the stores ourselves that we would manage. So it's a person shopping for you and delivering to your house.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. James?
Mr. Chair, can you point out Anybody, maybe Drew, where the outdoor seating is going to be? Is that like kind of on the front?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be bench locations along the front, but the placemaking area we were discussing was right on this corner here between the retail A and Market Basket.
Okay. Great. That's great. From my own personal experience, with competitors that are very nearby you guys, I know you have Costco right up the road, you have Hannaford, multiple Hannafords. They all serve a lunch, sort of a take to go. But one thing that a lot of them don't offer is a place to just sit there and eat it in that location. And because and I think what you're getting a lot of questions from with regard to pedestrian access in the parking lot is because this entire place is meant to be walkable, not just by people going to Market Basket, but everybody else that's going to be around with the junior retailer and the mixed use buildings that's going to be on Plainview Right and all the other residents that are there as well. So I think preparing yourself for probably a lot more striping in your parking lots for pedestrian walkways than what you're used to should be the expectation here. And seeing that, there is an outdoor seating area for those kind of lunches and things is good to hear. One question about the lighting that I have, and thank you, Bennett, for asking about the dimming at night.
I thought you would jump in on this, yeah.
I appreciate that greatly. One thing we're trying to reduce is sky glow at night, so anything you can do there is preferred. Our ordinance calls for 3,000 K color temperature for all the parking lot fixtures as well. Let's make sure that the building mounted fixtures are the same as well. I know buildings to Market Basket, like every other company, has their own set of standards, design standards, but let's make sure that their building exterior fixtures, building mounted exterior fixtures match the color ordinance as well. So it's just the color of the light, 3,000 K.
If I could add, all the parking lot lighting will be dark sky compliant. Eric will be working on the building lighting. Sometimes we do uplighting, but it depends on the local regulations.
Sure.
But we do accent lighting on the building.
And honestly, from a perspective of lighting design, like uplighting is fine. You have a couple fixtures that you want to highlight an architectural feature, flagpoles, things like that. That's okay. The biggest culprit of sky glow comes from just overpowering the light that is on the ground that's reflecting off of every metallic surface that's parked in that parking lot. And that's where all that sky glow comes from. It's not from that singular fixture that has, 50% uplight that's building mounted. It's not coming from that. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Kind of a random question. Around the holidays, does Market Basket ever decorate their trees?
They do not typically decorate their trees. We are, on some sites, we will do uplighting on the trees themselves. But they do, they're traditional, they put the trees on their light poles. So when you go see any of the Market Baskets, you'll see a tree up on the light pole that will be every other red, green, typically along the front of the store.
Okay.
It's kind of a hallmark of what they like to do.
No, that's cool. Again, because you're going to be really nestled in here with a lot of residential, and it's not going to be the mixed use that's going to be viewing this as well. It's going to be all the way down to 3i and Patriot Homes and everybody else who's going to be 3 and 4 stories tall looking over at the site. So I guess if you can include just like a small image or a graphic with your next submission, just so we can see what it looks like, because I personally haven't seen that. I don't go to Market Basket very often, sorry.
There's only 3 stores in Maine, so.
And I don't really live near any of them, so I think yet, right? Yeah, indeed. The point I'm making is because this is so close to a lot of density and population and residential density in this area, we're going to expect a little bit more just from the side of just let's make the building pop a little bit, especially during the holidays, special times of the year, and really see about trying to make it a destination.
Yeah. Yeah, I would encourage everybody here, if we do have 3 stores. We have Biddeford, we have Westbrook, and we just opened a store in Topsom. Topsom's a standalone, but I encourage you, the layout of this store will be very, very similar to Topsom. It's just a flip store. Back to the seating, we do have a Markets Cafe. We have prepared food on site, and there's typically a cafeteria area of 50 to 70 seats inside the building. So there's an area and what we found is that locals come and they will congregate there every morning, and, you know, it's a very used gathering area that gets used quite a bit, so.
That's great.
I'll try to get some pictures. I think we take the trees down pretty quick after Christmas, but I will try to get some pictures from the archives and see what I can show you.
I appreciate that. That's not, that would be great if you can, and if not, not a big deal. But so you do have interior seating, but there will be exterior seating as well? Okay, great. Those are all the questions I have today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, James. Roger, are you still alive and kicking?
I am.
Do you want to talk? You just muted yourself.
Yeah, I'm all set now. Yeah, I do have a question. I'm kind of curious about the parking, and I don't have a problem with the numbers or anything like that. It's more philosophical, I guess, with supermarkets. I know around here, all parking is perpendicular, but down in Florida, they have a lot of diagonal parking with one-way aisles. What's the grocery store philosophy regarding one or the other?
I'll give you my own philosophy, that when you put the angled parking in, people do not follow directions and they go down the wrong way, or they like to back into a space and they end up
That's right.
going out in the wrong direction. So this way we make the aisles wider than typical, and we allow for people to go in both directions, because you can put arrows on the pavement, you can put signs up, but people will not follow directions.
Okay. You're absolutely correct about that. They can actually be dangerous.
I can add real quick, it's typically done as a space saver if you don't have enough space to put in all the parking you would prefer.
Yeah.
The drive aisles can be narrower with the angled parking, and the angled parking takes up a little less space. So usually it's because you don't have another choice is when they do angled parking. It's not preferred.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
And one last point, and you'll know this going to Florida, is they always have the curb stops in between all the spaces down there.
Yes.
And in New England, if we do that, we end up with a snow pile with curb stops in them.
Yeah. Okay. Just another point of observation. Every grocery store around here that I'm aware of has some sort of a cafe area inside where people can, if they choose to buy something to eat right there, there's something inside where they can eat. And I don't ever recall anybody eating outside at any of these supermarkets around here. So that's just, and I don't stand there, all day long keeping track of this, but just as an observation.
Yeah, we have a proposed cafeteria in there with probably 50 to 70 spaces or seats.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the spaces at both Westbrook and Biddeford, so. And I know the other grocery stores around here have spaces for people to eat if they want to choose to do that. Then just another personal observation. On the years that I've been on this board, we've had a number of successful businesses come into town, and they want to do business in town, and we certainly welcome them. And my personal philosophy is, if the business comes into town and meets all our requirements, our guidance, our ordinances, and obviously the zoning and the ordinances and things like that, I tend to give them, they know what they're doing. They know what their business is. And I know Market Basket is a very successful grocery chain. And my tendency is, they know what they're going to do. They know what they need to do to be successful. And as long as they meet our requirements, regarding our ordinances, et cetera, like that, I give a lot of deference to them. And, so that's where I'm at on this. I'm not gonna demand they have a certain color on their building. If that's what their branding is, that's fine with me. I'm not gonna demand that they have a sidewalk where they feel a sidewalk may not be required, or has, in their experience, it's never been needed. I just had to just mention that, so, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Well, everybody's been through it. I'll just reiterate, it's nice to see, Market Basket wanting to come here to Scarborough. But I think Roger summed it up. We do things the way our residents want us to do things. And that's all in the form of our ordinances, along with our comprehensive plan that I would encourage you to look at. I know Market Basket's not new to Maine, but you are going to be new to Scarborough, and we certainly have worked hard on our vision for this town and the vision of the Downs. The point I'm making here is your best friends are our planning department, and work closely with them and make sure you're meeting the letter of the law with our ordinances. And where we have, as a planning board, have some flexibility, we'll give you, the burden of proof is on you to make it the case that you want it that way when we might not see eye to eye. But I can tell you, we're not going to give deference to Market Basket's experience in Massachusetts over the ordinances that we have developed here in Scarborough, Maine. And we look forward to having robust conversations when you come before us with a site plan, and look forward to you working closely with our staff. Any questions for us?
I think we're all set on this end.
And we'll see you again.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Time.
Thanks, Rick. I just want to thank the board for taking this much time on all of our items. Went through a lot, so I really appreciate it and got some good feedback, and we'll be back to you with some site plan applications. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Look forward to it. All right. Moving on to, oh, good, you got yours. Fine. We are on staff reports. Any minor development?
None at this time.
None at this time. All right. Keep flipping there. We've got administrative amendment.
None at this time. I did want to mention, though, that we are putting forth an EV ordinance amendment from the Sustainability Committee to Ordinance Committee in March. And that will come to you all at your March, hopefully your March 17th public hearing meeting.
Thanks for that. Heads up. All right, closing items. We've got correspondence.
None at this time.
All right. You're limited to 3 minutes. Now, planning board comments. Usually this is a time that, yeah. And I'm gonna take the floor first because I can. Last month, we were looking for a liaison to the Conservation Commission, and respectfully understand your position, and unless you've changed it.
No, so, so unfortunately, I don't have the availability to make the commitment to that conservation committee at this time. I do take all my volunteerism very seriously. I think I had perfect attendance for every meeting last year, with the exception of one workshop. So looking ahead at the schedule, balancing time between an active 3 and 5-year-old,
Totally respect that, James.
I commit 110% where I can, and where I can't, I dip. So,
well, I just want to float it by my colleagues here that we do have Ben, who is an active member of the Conservation Commission. Well, he is the first alternate, so meaning if we have a full board, the alternates don't vote. But in conference with Autumn, would anybody have objections of having Ben fulfill any liaison task that he needs to bring to us from the Conservation Commission. Just because he's not a voting member, can we just override that?
I have no objection to that at all. I think it's a very logical choice. Bennett's already on the committee, so, I mean, we can make this work very
Yeah,
easily.
and we have same case with other, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say while he can't be listed on the website as the official liaison, anything he has to say and bring to us from the Conservation Commission, or that we would like him to take back to the Conservation Commission, I think that would be wonderful.
Let me ask you then, Ben, are you okay with that?
Yeah, no problem. I
All
mean,
right, then
works
let's
for me.
put a resolve on this issue, and you're the ad hoc liaison.
De facto liaison.
I like that word
That's,
better.
that's
de
the right
facto.
Latin phrase there, yeah.
All right. Weenie, weenie, weekie. So super. I think we can go with that. All right, now planning board comments. Rachel.
Yes, I attended and spoke at the All Board Summit on behalf of the planning board. And I did mention the fact that we actually had a quorum of the planning board there because so many people are active on so many other committees. The only council goal that the planning board is specifically listed for is growth, housing, and land use. And the goal is to develop a basis for defining an affordable and workforce housing policy.
Policy.
Yeah, so there is a question as I read the actionable tasks, there are some workshops, and perhaps if we're asked to attend or have a representative, we will get that request. That's an option. There are engage the public in a discussion of things, and then define clear policy objectives for the next 10 years for affordable and workforce housing. So it's not terribly clear how we fit, but that's the only goal that is available for the planning board. So I suggest that you, Autumn, could you send what Karen Martin sent out? And those are the council goals for the year. I did speak, not specifically on behalf of the planning board, but because it's something that I think we need to do, or the town council, is that I asked them to take a look as part of the policy development and incentives for technological innovations in housing. It really, to get creative, and very specifically what's going on in manufactured housing and 3D printing at the University of Maine, using wood products instead of steel, and imported from Canada, subject to 25% tariffs now. That might be a way to look at, to approach housing, affordable housing, because it is less expensive. I also suggested that another possible innovation might be a co-op land ownership project. In other words, how can houses be built on co-op land instead of individual lots? There are some ways that I've heard of. I think it can be explored. I don't know if it's possible. We do have that at Simplicity Court. It is at the Downs, the small 6 houses.
Or the tiny homes?
Yeah. So those lots aren't individually owned.
Right, right.
So that's a co-op housing project. So that there are some alternatives to explore. And if some of them are brought to fruition, the ordinances for how they would be done certainly would come to us for our comments. So I don't know what we're going to be asked to do. I thought that I looked at housing policy and said, planning board. But anyhow, I think I think we do have a role. I think we can find a good role in there with all of the expertise that we have, especially because the board members come from so many other committees and have such a broad perspective of housing and land use and conservation in Scarborough.
Well, thank you, and thanks for showing up. I was probably on my third margarita at that point.
Well, I will say, I have kudos to Tom Hall, who realized I was not going to make it across the parking lot on my feet.
Yeah.
Probably on my ass, but probably, but not on my feet. And he escorted me out. He helped me get through about 5 inches of slush in the parking lot.
He's a gentleman.
Yes.
Any other planning board comments? Seeing
Yeah,
none,
I have something.
take it away, Roger.
No, first of all, I'd like to welcome Tyler to the board. That's a very precarious seat you're sitting in. The members usually last 2.5 meetings. So hang in there.
My intentions are to last longer than that.
Okay, good.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes, the last one lasted a half a meeting, as near as I could tell.
We're gonna let him have your seat then, Roger.
No, I would, I think Rachel made some good comments there about affordable housing, or housing in particular. And one thing that concerns me about Scarborough is, that I think we have to look at ourselves as where we fit into the region and into the state. I mean, housing is a problem in the whole country. But I think we have to be very careful that we don't make our communities so difficult to live in. Especially affordable for many of our citizens and the offsprings of our citizens. So I think housing is a very critical issue. And there's a lot of information on that right now. So I'm going to get off my pedestal right now. Thank you.
Well, glad you could join us on your pedestal.
Okay. It's precarious.
Anybody else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have it. Thank you all. And stay warm.